Some wounds do not close when the door shuts behind them. They sit quietly in the dark, listening, waiting, learning the shape of another birth. Tonight, you are following one such wound, from a wedding hall bright with gold to a battlefield dim with dust, where an old vow finally meets the one pain it could never escape. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are standing where three cities seem to breathe into one another. To your left, Kashi glows along the river. Temple lamps tremble on the Ganga. The stone ghats still hold the day's heat, and the evening air smells of jasmine, clarified butter, damp clay, and wood smoke. Somewhere behind carved palace screens, maidservants are combing perfumed oil through royal hair. Garlands are being lifted carefully, one flower at a time, as if tomorrow will be gentle. Ahead of you rises Hastinapura, stern and old. Its halls are cool with shadow and sandalwood. White umbrellas hang over throne rooms. Conch shells rest silent for now. In those corridors, vows are heavier than iron. They do not bend. They do not ask who gets crushed beneath them. And far beyond both, already waiting, lies Kurukshetra. The plain is still, not silent, never silent. Wind moves through dry grass. Horses stamp in the dark of years yet to come. Dust gathers before anyone has disturbed it. If you listen long enough, you can almost hear chariot wheels from another lifetime, rolling toward a reckoning that has been patient beyond patience. This is how the night opens, not with triumph, not with drums of victory, with a memory that refuses to lie down. You settle beside the river of remembrance, and the current brings faces with it. A king with a fisherman's daughter in his heart. A son who gives up crown, marriage, children, everything, and does it so completely that the heavens themselves shudder. Devavrata, who becomes Bhishma with one terrible vow. You can almost feel the air change when he speaks it. The court goes still. Silk stops rustling. Even the incense seems to pause. A vow like that sounds noble in a crowded hall. It sounds much less convenient to the people who have to live inside it. And Bhishma lives inside it forever. You can see him now if you like. Tall, unshaken, armor polished like pale fire. Eyes steady, the kind of man who makes everyone else stand straighter without meaning to. He has given away kingship and the ordinary warmth of a household. No wife, no children, no soft old age with grandchildren climbing into his lap. Just duty. Duty and more duty. An ancient family's human wall. Very impressive. Also a little exhausting. Because once a man becomes that devoted, no one in the palace ever lets him rest. Need brides fetched? Send Bhishma. Need a kingdom steadied? Send Bhishma. Need impossible burdens carried without complaint? Of course. Bring them to the one man who made the mistake of sounding reliable. Tonight, that reliability is going to become someone else's ruin. The river wind cools your skin. A bell rings from a shrine across the water. Somewhere, a priest lifts flame before the deity, and the light flashes against brass and vanishes. The smell of marigold thickens. Boats knock softly against the steps below. Above the ghats, Kashi's palace windows shine like watchful eyes. Inside that palace are three sisters, Amba Ambika, Ambalika. You do not meet them first in sorrow. You meet them in preparation. Anklets, silk, hair heavy with flowers, gold cool against the neck, the quiet restlessness before a Swayamvara, when kings gather and a princess is meant to choose. Outside, courtyards are washed clean, banners are raised, drums are tested. Every prince within riding distance has found a mirror and become deeply interested in his own heroic profile. Ancient India had many virtues. Modesty at a Swayamvara was not always one of them. The hall in Kashi will blaze tomorrow. Lamps in long rows, lotus patterns on polished floors, jeweled crowns under painted ceilings, warriors pretending not to measure one another, servants moving with trays of betel, sweet drinks and flowers. And in the middle of all that splendor, one young woman already carrying a private choice in her heart. Amba has looked inward already. That is where the trouble begins. Because halls like these love public ceremony. They trust garlands, witnesses, drums, fathers, heralds. But the heart has a rude habit of arriving early, making its decision in silence, and refusing to wait for the musicians. By the time the conches sound in Kashi, Amba's heart is already turned towards Salva, king of Sauba. It is a simple thing, quiet, human. She has chosen. And the world is about to behave as though her choosing counts for very little. Across the night, Hastinapura stirs. Bhishma has not come for himself. He never does. He comes for his half-brother, Vichitravirya, the young king who must be furnished with queens the way a fire must be furnished with ghee. Dynasty first, personal feeling later, much later, possibly never. Palace logic is like that, very polished, very confident, often terrible. You hear the harness before you see the chariot. Leather drawn tight, horses snorting silver mist into the cool dawn. Wheels rimmed for speed, standard lifting in the morning air. Bhishma mounts not like a bridegroom, but like a storm, deciding on a direction. When he sets out for Kashi, the road itself seems to brace. And now, the three places draw closer together. Kashi, with its wedding lamps, Hastinapura, with its iron vow, Kurukshetra, with its patient dust. You can feel already that they are not separate after all. One hall, one promise, one interruption, that is enough. Enough to trouble decades, enough to send a soul through fire, forest, humiliation, austerity, rebirth. Enough to place a warrior on a battlefield years later, facing the only elder who cannot raise his weapon against him, or against her, or against the wound he helped make. The night deepens softly around you. A breeze moves over the river and carries the scent of wet stone and lotus. In distant courtyards, women finish stringing tomorrow's flowers. In stables, grooms rub down restless horses. In the Kuru capital, old men sleep uneasily under carved beams, while fate, tireless as ever, keeps walking the corridors. And there is Amba, still unseized, still uncast out, still standing at the edge of the life she expected to enter. There is Bhishma, still certain that duty, if held firmly enough, can pass through the world without breaking anything precious. There is Shikhandi too, though not yet by that name, only a far-off echo tonight, a shape beyond the lamp smoke, a footstep not yet taken, the future waiting in another cradle, listening. Stay by the river a little longer. In a moment, the drums in Kashi will begin. The garland will be lifted, the chariot will arrive, and one unfinished cry will start its long journey across lifetimes. The garlands are still fresh when the doors burst open, and before anyone can object, the horses are already screaming into the road. But just before that, stay here. Morning in Kashi opens gold and slow. The city has dressed itself for a wedding day. Fresh rangoli powders glow at thresholds. Mango leaves hang green and glossy above carved doorways. Temple bells ring over the river, and from the palace kitchens comes the rich smell of ghee, cardamom, and hot rice being lifted from bronze pots. Servants hurry through long corridors, carrying trays of sandal paste, flower strings, and armfuls of silk that shimmer like water. You are there early enough to feel the anticipation before it hardens into noise. The women's chambers are bright with polished metal mirrors and low laughter. Gold anklets lie in open boxes. Hair is being braided with jasmine. A maid kneels to gather stray lotus petals from the floor and mutters under her breath that royal weddings shed flowers the way storms shed leaves. Another maid is trying to fasten a necklace with hands that are almost steady. Almost. And at the center of all this movement are the three princesses of Kashi. Amba, Ambika, Ambalika. Three sisters dressed for the moment when a hall full of kings will look up and try, very hard, to appear as if none of this matters. Amba sits the straightest. That is the first thing you notice. Ambika is lovely in a quiet way, watching everything through lowered lashes. Ambalika has the quick, uncertain brightness of someone trying not to let nerves show. But Amba sits like someone already listening for a particular footstep. Her eyes go once to the window lattice where daylight cuts the room into patterned shadow, then back to the women dressing her. Her silk is deep red, edged with gold thread, fine as sunlit spider silk. Her wrists are layered with bangles that click softly whenever she moves. Around her neck hangs a garland not yet raised, still resting across her lap. White flowers cool against the warmth of her skin. The room smells of jasmine, sandalwood, and lamp smoke. Outside, drums begin. Not the wild drums of battle, not yet. Ceremonial drums, slow, measured, grand enough to tell a city that royalty is walking. The sisters rise. They move through corridors lined with attendants holding trays of flame. Priests murmur blessings. Somewhere a conch sounds, long and low, and the note seems to glide along the stone itself. Sunlight spills through the high arches and flashes on jewels, on polished pillars, on the tiny trembling points of oil lamps that still burn, though morning has fully come. You can feel the temperature climbing already. Silk sticks lightly at the wrists. Gold grows warm against the skin. The palace stones still hold a little night coolness, but not for long. Ahead lies the Swayamvara hall. And what a hall it is! Kashi has decided that if kings are coming from every direction, they will remember where they came. The pillars are wrapped with flower chains, thick as a wrestler's arm. Painted banners hang from the rafters. Bronze lamps stand in rows, their flames steady in the still air. The floor has been rubbed smooth and gleams underfoot like dark honey. The kings are already gathered. This part is worth savoring. You have never seen so many men trying to look effortlessly magnificent while secretly checking whether the next man's crown is taller. They sit in rows according to rank, territory, and self-importance, which is not always the same thing. Some wear white so fine it seems woven from cloud. Some are armored beneath ceremonial cloth because dignity is excellent, but caution is better. Gemmed turbans flash. Heavy necklaces rest on broad chests. Rings catch the light each time someone adjusts a bracelet, a sword belt, a fold of silk, or his own expression. A few of them carry themselves with real ease. Most are performing ease so hard it has become a kind of exercise. One old king has lined his eyes with coal and is pretending not to notice that it has made him look slightly fiercer and slightly sleepier at the same time. Another keeps smoothing his mustache as if the future depends on it. A young prince from some western court sits too rigidly, like a man remembering every instruction his mother gave him and fearing he will fail them all at once. The musicians play. Flutes twine through the drum beats. The air smells of rose water scattered on the floor, and the faint metal tang of weapons hidden under wedding cloth. Then the heralds announce the daughters of Kashi. The hall rises. The sisters enter. You hear silk first, then anklets, then the collective intake of breath from men who had prepared speeches in their heads and now cannot remember any of them. Amba walks first. Her head is high. The flower garland rests in her hands. Her earrings brush her neck when she turns. If she feels the weight of all these eyes, she does not bend beneath it. She moves past kings, princes, warriors, men old enough to be her father, men young enough to be frightened by her gaze. And she is searching, not desperately, not obviously, but searching. Every few steps her eyes lift and move over the rows. You feel it before you understand it. She is not choosing among strangers. Her choice, in her heart, has already been made. There, not far from the front, sits King Salva. He is lean, sharp-faced, wearing armor worked so finely it looks almost like dark water under his royal cloth. His crown is less ornate than some in the room, but he carries himself like a man who trusts steel more than jewels. When Amba's glance reaches him, something changes in her face. Not much, just enough. A softening at the eyes, a breath she had been holding too carefully. Salva sees it. He does not smile broadly. That would be foolish in a hall like this, but his shoulders loosen. His hand, resting on his knee, unclenches. This was how it was meant to go. Not with some dramatic outburst, not with poetry shouted under balconies like a lovesick bard who has skipped sleep and reason. More quietly than that, more royal, more dangerous in a way. She would pass the others. She would stand before Salva. She would place the garland around his neck. And the hall, however annoyed, would have to accept it. This is the shape of the morning. You can feel it, complete, delicate, entire. Then the outer doors slam open, not ceremonially, not gracefully. They strike the walls with a crack that snaps every head toward them. The music stumbles. One drum keeps going for a beat too long, then stops with a rather embarrassed thump. Dust and sunlight pour through the doorway together. And in that frame, broad as fate, and twice as unwelcome, stands Bhishma. He does not enter like a guest. He enters like a verdict. Armor gleams across his chest and shoulders, silver and steel under the wash of morning light. His white banner trails behind him. His face is stern, composed, almost severe in its calm. He is older than many men in this hall and looks stronger than most of them anyway. His bow is in his hand. His presence fills the doorway so completely that for a breath, the whole Swayamvara seems to shrink around him. You feel the hall change, not in stages, at once, wedding to uproar, perfume to iron, silk to tension. A murmur runs through the kings like wind through dry grass. Some rise halfway, some reach for weapons before remembering where they are. Some stare in disbelief, because yes, Bhishma of the Kurus is famous, but one still likes a little warning before an earthquake. He wastes no time. He announces in the hearing of all that the daughters of Kashi are being taken for Vichitravirya, his half-brother, king of Hastinapura. He names the line, the claim, the right of the Kurus. He speaks with that hard certainty men have when they are accustomed to being obeyed by entire kingdoms. And then, just to salt the wound nicely, he makes it clear he has not come to compete. He has come to carry them off. The hall erupts. Kings shout. Chairs scrape. Someone actually drops a ceremonial staff, which clatters across the floor in a most undignified way. Hands fly to sword hilts. Priests scatter backward. Courtiers press against the columns, eyes wide, like deer deciding whether this counts as weather or disaster. You are standing close enough to hear Amba's bangles strike together when her grip tightens on the garland. This is the instant, the one that will not leave her. She had a name in her heart, a man in her sight, a choice half a breath from becoming real. And now another will act as if that breath never belonged to her. Bhishma strides forward. No hesitation, no request, no pause for consent, embarrassment, explanation, or the minor detail that this is supposed to be a ceremony where the bride chooses. He reaches the princesses in a few swift steps. Guards move, then freeze, because this is Bhishma, and everyone knows exactly who that means. The sound in the hall becomes enormous. Shouting, metal drawn from sheaths, women crying out, sandals slipping on polished stone, the slap of loose flower chains falling from a pillar where someone crashed into it. You smell crushed petals now, and sweat, and the sudden harsh scent of horse leather from outside. Bhishma gathers the three sisters and drives toward the entrance with the unstoppable focus of a man who has already decided the world will arrange itself around his vow. Ambika and Ambalika are swept in the shock of it, pale and breathless, hardly understanding what is happening, except that everything is happening too fast. But Amba understands enough. You see it in the way she turns once, sharply, toward Salva. Not because she expects the room to save her, because she expects him to move, and Salva does. Too late for the first moment, not too late for the second. Bhishma has the princesses in his chariot before the nearest king properly reaches the doorway. The horses rear, bitrings flashing, charioteers shout, a wheel grinds against stone. The entire palace front bursts into heat and dust. Then Bhishma is gone from the threshold and out into the road. The hall spills after him. What was a wedding procession becomes a pursuit. The city outside hardly understands what it is seeing. One moment, people are lining the streets to glimpse princesses and suitors. The next, a Kuru warrior's chariot is tearing through Kashi with 3 royal brides aboard, while behind him, half the crowned heads of the region roar for their own chariots. You are in the shock of motion now. The horses are wild with speed. The reins snap tight. Wheels strike ruts and leap. Dust blasts up so thick it coats the tongue. Flower garlands from the palace gates whip loose and scatter under the wheels. Women on balconies cry out and cover their mouths. Merchants flatten themselves against walls with armfuls of cloth and fruit, watching a wedding become war before breakfast is even finished. Inside the chariot, the world is all jolts and noise. Ambalika clutches the rail. Ambika is white with fear. Amba braces herself, one hand locked against the side, hair loosening from its careful arrangement with every violent turn. The smell is no longer jasmine. It is hot wood, horse sweat, leather, dust, and the rising metal breath of battle close behind. You can feel each impact through your bones. Bhishma stands firm, broad and unshaken, as if chariots naturally fly through cities carrying unwilling brides, while kings chase behind. He looks back once, measuring distance, and that is all. No sign of doubt crosses his face, no flicker of apology. The vow inside him is iron. He serves the throne of Hastinapura. His brother needs brides. Therefore, brides will be acquired. Simple, very simple, unless you're one of the brides. The road out of Kashi opens wide. Now the pursuers begin to close. Conches blare behind them. Hooves thunder. Wheels scream against packed earth. Standard after standard appears through the dust, bright banners snapping. Kings who only moments ago were adjusting crowns and trying to appear elegant are now standing in their chariots, red-faced and furious, shouting for Bhishma to stop, turn, fight, explain himself, return the maidens, or all four at once. The heat is fierce now. Sun glances off arrowheads. The wind tears at veils and loose silk. You taste grit. The horse's flanks are dark with sweat. Bhishma laughs, not lightly, not kindly, with the fierce delight of a warrior who has finally been given what he came for after all. He calls back to them, challenging them. If they want the princesses, they may try to take them. The road is wide enough. Their weapons are in hand. This morning, apparently, has improved. And just like that, the pursuit becomes combat. Arrows rise. You hear them first. The quick, dry hiss through air, a sound almost too soft for the damage it promises. They strike the chariot frame, the pennant post, the earth around the wheels. Bhishma answers in a blur so fast it seems his bowstring becomes one continuous note. Kings fall back, chariots splinter, horses shy and scream. The road fills with dust and broken shafts. Bright cloth darkens with road grit. Men who arrived perfumed and polished are suddenly coughing, cursing, and discovering that wedding finery is not ideal for surviving Bhishma. There is something almost absurd in it. A prince from one hill kingdom loses his jeweled turban entirely and keeps fighting bareheaded, looking outraged in several directions at once. Another king, magnificent at ceremony, proves much less magnificent once his driver panics and takes a turn, fit for a goat path. A third shouts a heroic challenge, and then has to duck so quickly his own necklace smacks him in the mouth. No one is having the day they expected, least of all Amba. You are close enough to feel the shift inside her. At first, there is shock, bright, blinding, impossible, the mind refusing to accept the violence of interruption. Then comes anger, then the cold, clear edge beneath it, because through the dust, she can still see one banner in particular. Salva's. He has not stopped. He drives harder than the rest, cutting through broken formation, arrow answering arrow. His chariot comes on with a speed that feels different from the others. Less outrage, more purpose. Amba sees him, and for a moment, hope flares so sharply it almost hurts. He came. The words don't need speaking. They are already in her blood. Salva reaches Bhishma at last. The clash between them stills the world for a breath. Bhishma turns. Salva stands high in his chariot, bow curved, arms strong and sure. Dust streams from both teams of horses. The sunlight between them is sharp as a blade. Their standards snap above the road. Around them, lesser fighters pull back without meaning to, because everyone knows when two great warriors have found each other. The arrows fly thick now, fast, clean, merciless. Bhishma cuts down shafts in the air. Salva answers with volleys that strike hard enough to rattle the Kuru chariot. Drivers wheel and correct. Horses foam at the bit. The road thunders under all that force. You can smell the heated leather and hear the breath of the animals, harsh and wet. Amba leans toward the side despite the danger, eyes fixed on Salva. This is not a tournament now, not a display, not boast or pageantry. This is a man she had chosen trying to reclaim that choice from the grip of another man's vow. For one stretched moment, it almost seems possible. Salva fights fiercely. Fiercely, enough to make the watching kings shout in sudden renewed hope. Fiercely enough to make Ambika and Ambalika lift their heads. Fiercely enough that even Bhishma must give him the full attention due a real opponent. But Bhishma is Bhishma. That old storm strength, that dreadful training, that calm amid chaos, it gathers around him. His bow moves, his arrows answer. One by one, he strips away Salva's advantage. The king of Salva fights like a man with everything to gain and everything to lose. Bhishma fights like a mountain that has picked up weapons. The end comes swiftly. Salva's bow is broken. His chariot is ruined. He is struck down into defeat, spared but overmastered, left in the dust of the road, while Bhishma's horses surge forward again. The sound around you dulls for a heartbeat. Hope can do that when it breaks. It makes the world go muffled. Amba stares back. She sees where Salva stands or kneels amid the churned earth. I should say stands, because a king will stand if he can, even with pride in splinters, and Bhishma is already carrying her farther away. The distance grows with sickening speed. Dust rolls between them. Standards blur. The road bends. That was her moment, and it has been taken again. The pursuing kings, seeing Salva defeated and Bhishma unshaken, begin to fall away. Some are wounded. Some are wiser than they were an hour ago. Some have discovered that getting between Bhishma and his purpose is like arguing with monsoon rain. In either case, the chase thins. The noise changes. Battle roars fade behind them. The road grows longer, emptier. Only the pounding of hooves remains, the creak and shudder of the chariot, and the hard wind rushing past. You are with them now as Kashi recedes. The city's towers sink behind dust and distance. The wedding drums are long gone. The scent of flowers has vanished entirely. Afternoon gathers heat over the road. Fields pass, groves pass. Villages watch from far off, startled into stillness by the sight of the Kuru hero bearing away 3 princesses like prizes from a game no one else knew was being played. Inside the chariot, no one speaks for a long while. There are moments when silence is not peace at all. This is one of them. Ambika cries quietly, trying not to be heard. Ambalika presses trembling fingers to the edge of the car and stares ahead because looking anywhere else makes the truth too obvious. Amba stands in a silence far colder. Something is changing in her, not yet the great furnace of later years, not yet the sharpened will that will drive her through forest and vow and fire and rebirth. But the first hard layer is forming. You can feel it. She had come to choose. She had seen the man she meant to choose. She had been seized before speaking. She had watched that man try and fail to recover her. And the one who took her does not seem, even now, to understand the full weight of what he has done. The sun tilts west. Shadows lengthen under the horses. Sweat dries to salt at the temples. Dust settles in the pleats of silk once arranged for marriage. A flower from Amba's garland, crushed during the struggle, has caught in the chariot rail, its petals brown slowly in the heat. The road to Hastinapura stretches on. Bhishma finally turns enough to address the sisters. He assures them with complete confidence that they are being taken for a royal marriage, that they will be honored, that his brother is worthy, that no disgrace is intended. He speaks as though order has merely been imposed on disorder, as though the violence of the method can be cancelled by the dignity of the destination. Amba hears him, and if there is an answer in her, it does not come out yet, because some shocks arrive too large for immediate speech. They pass first through the body, the locked jaw, the cold hands, the heartbeat that cannot decide whether to race or stop. Only later do they become words. You feel evening begin around them. The air cools just a little. Smoke rises from distant cook fires. Birds wheel over darkening fields. The horses no longer scream. They labor. The great violence of the day settles into its consequences. And Amba, still in bridal silk, understands at last the shape of her captivity. Not in chains, in arrangements, in vows, in decisions made by men who believe they are acting correctly. That is the horror arriving in her, slow and precise. If she had been taken by some wild bandit from the scrub hills, the thing would have at least named itself, plainly. But this comes armored in duty. This comes under royal sanction. This comes speaking of honor, while her own choice lies crushed on the road, behind her, like the fallen petals caught under the wheels. You are there in the fading light when she lowers her eyes to the garland still tangled in her lap. It was meant for Salva. It never reached him. A few blossoms have bruised dark where her fingers grip too hard. The chariot rolls on. Ahead waits Hastinapura, with its carved halls and old ambitions and the king for whom this outrage was committed. Ahead waits the moment when Amba will finally speak aloud what was already true that morning, that her heart had chosen elsewhere. Ahead waits a door opening, and then another closing, and then another after that. But not yet. For now stay with the road. Stay with the rattle of wheels over hard earth. Stay with the cooling wind that lifts the loose edge of torn silk. Stay with the smell of dust, horse sweat, and distant river water as dusk slowly washes the sky. Behind them, Kashi's wedding lamps are being lit anyway. In one palace, servants are gathering abandoned garlands from a floor still marked by sandals and confusion. On one long road, Bhishma rides north, believing he has done what duty required. And beside him, Amba sits very still, her choice unspoken, her humiliation fresh, her future beginning to harden around one terrible truth. The world can take a life off its course in a single afternoon. And sometimes the soul never forgives the turn. The road back should have led to welcome. Instead, every gate along the way has its own polite cruelty waiting behind it. By the time they reach Hastinapura, the dust has settled into everything. It clings to veils, to horse manes, to the edges of jeweled armlets. The city rises pale in the late sun, its walls warm as baked clay, its banners stirring above the gates. Conches sound somewhere deeper in the palace quarter. Servants hurry. Guards stand straight. Everything looks orderly. That is almost the worst part, because Amba's life is no longer orderly at all. You can feel the strain in the air as the three princesses are brought inside. Cool stone underfoot now, the smell of sandalwood smoke, brass lamps already lit in shadowed halls. Somewhere, a maid carries a tray of flowers and ghee, as if this were still a proper marriage business, as if the world has not just been ripped sideways. Bhishma presents the daughters of Kashi for Vichitravirya, the young king for whom he seized them. That should have been the end of it. Instead, this is where the first buried truth rises. Amba, who has ridden in silence from Kashi to Hastinapura, finally speaks. She tells Bhishma what should have been spoken in the Swayamvara hall. If anyone had allowed time for a woman to draw full breath, her heart had already chosen. She had already given herself inwardly to King Salva. He had come to the assembly. She had meant to place the garland on him. In her mind, the choice was done. You are standing close enough to imagine the moment. Her voice steady by force. Her fingers probably cold despite the heat. Her sisters very still beside her. Bhishma, that iron pillar of a man, listening, and for the first time since Kashi, he hesitates. He is not a fool. He understands at once what has happened. He has stormed into a hall full of kings, defeated them, carried away 3 women in the name of duty, and in doing so, he has taken one woman from the husband she had already chosen. No, Arrow had told him that. No priest had stopped him. No one had managed to get a word in around all the heroic noise. Awkward. The palace itself seems to pause around them. You can almost hear the little sounds, the wick of a lamp cracking, silk whispering as someone shifts weight, a bracelet tapping softly against another wrist. Bhishma asks what she means, and she explains it plainly. She and Salva had already fixed their hearts upon one another. She had intended to choose him before everyone. She had been carried away before she could do it. This matters. Even in a world tangled with vows and arranged alliances, and men who think arriving in armor solves everything, this matters. Bhishma stands inside the trap his own righteousness has built. He cannot keep her for Vichitravirya now, not if she has already chosen another. That would violate the very order he believes he is protecting. And whatever else he is not careless about such things. His honor cuts in only one direction, but it cuts cleanly. So he does the only thing he can do. He releases her, not with romance, not with apology, warm enough to heal anything, but with formal correctness. He gives her leave to go to Salva. The decision lands like a cup of water on a fire that is not nearly out, but hisses for a moment anyway. Hope returns. Small, shaky, but real. You can feel it, can't you? That sudden, desperate lift in the chest. The road had bent wrong, yes, but perhaps it can be bent back. Perhaps the humiliation in Kashi can still be repaired. Perhaps Salva will understand. Perhaps love, once named aloud, will open the right door at last. Amba leaves Hastinapura. This journey is not like the first one. There is no victorious thunder now, no storming warrior hauling prizes north. She goes with permission, which sounds better and feels worse. A woman sent onward like a difficult matter properly redirected. The road to Salva's city runs through dry country, where the wind smells of hot grass and sun-struck stone. Bullock carts creak past. Monkeys chatter from peepal branches. At dusk, the sky turns copper behind the trees, and campfires begin to dot the earth. You ride with her in imagination, and the silence is heavy. Hope is there, so is dread, because now everything depends on one man receiving her exactly as she dreams he will. That is too much weight for any door. Days pass, the dust grows finer. The mornings start cool and end fierce. Travelers on the road bow when they learn a princess passes by. but then stare a little too long. News has wings. A woman taken by Bhishma and then sent away is already half a rumor before she reaches Salva's gates. At last, the city appears. Salva's capital is not Hastinapura's vast old seat, but it is proud. Fort walls ring the palace like a girdle of stone. Pennons snap above the ramparts. The gatehouse smells of oil, horse leather, and sun-heated timber. Guards in polished breastplates lower their spears, then lift them when they recognize who comes. Courtiers scatter inward with the speed of men delighted to carry dangerous news. Amba enters expecting refuge, maybe not ease, maybe not instant happiness, but refuge at least. You know that feeling when your feet ache and your heart is ahead of you, already inside the room, already imagining the face that will look up and soften. That is how she crosses the threshold. And then the room does not soften. Salva receives her. He sees her. He knows perfectly well why she has come. The trouble is that he also knows who brought her here and who defeated him in front of the assembled kings of India and what all those eyes witnessed. He remembers Bhishma's chariot, Bhishma's arrows, Bhishma's terrible ease. Pride has a long memory. Humiliation has an even longer one. The hall is bright with afternoon light. You can picture it on the polished floor, on the carved pillars, on the gold edge of Salva's throne. Incense burns somewhere near the shrine alcove. Men stand along the walls, pretending not to listen, and listening with their entire bodies. Amba tells him she had chosen him in her heart. She tells him Bhishma, once he understood, allowed her to come. She has crossed the distance back to him. She is here, and Salva, poor, proud, defeated Salva, cannot step across the last span to meet her. He is caught inside a thought small enough to fit in one clenched fist and strong enough to ruin everything. Bhishma took her. Bhishma conquered him. Bhishma sent her back. What would it mean, before all kings, before all memory, for him to accept what another man had won and released? You can feel the chill begin even in the warm hall. Salva speaks not like a lover reaching for what was nearly lost, but like a man trying to escape disgrace without admitting fear. He says, she has been in another man's power. He says, Bhishma took her publicly. He says, how can he, defeated as he was, now accept her? He circles the same wound again and again until his pride sounds almost like principle. Almost. The words are cleaner than the feeling beneath them. That is how cruelty often arrives in courts. Dressed, groomed. Speaking of propriety. Amba tries again. She explains. She insists. She had chosen him. She was taken against her will. Bhishma himself sent her here in acknowledgement of that truth. If ever there was a moment for a man to be larger than his injury, this is it. Salva cannot do it. You are in that hall now. You can smell the lamp smoke. You can hear a fly worrying at the edge of a fruit platter no one touches. Sweat gathers under necklaces and under armor straps. Outside, somewhere beyond the lattice work, a peacock cries. Inside, a woman's future narrows to the width of one man's shame. He refuses her. Not with a shout, not with a dramatic blow. That would almost be easier to carry. No, he refuses her with the coldness of a door being shut carefully. He says he cannot take her as wife. He says the matter has been stained. He says Bhishma carried her away. And that cannot be unwound. Whether he believes she is blameless almost stops mattering. He cannot bear the laughter he imagines in other men's mouths. He cannot bear the shape of his own defeat. So love which had seemed one clear thing in Kashi, crumples in the light. Humiliation is bad enough when your enemy gives it to you. There is something especially bitter when it comes from the one you thought would save you from it. Amba stands there and hears that the place she was running toward no longer exists. The road back should have led to welcome. Instead, it has led to this. If you stay beside her for a breath, really stay there, you can feel what happens inside the body before the mind catches up. The face goes hot, then cold. The floor feels too steady, absurdly steady, while the whole world lurches. The ears fill with a strange humming. Courtly phrases drift past like scraps of cloth in dirty water. She has done nothing wrong, and yet every man in power seems to be standing around her, explaining why her life cannot continue. Salva sends her away. Maybe he thinks he's preserving honor. Maybe he thinks Dharma is on his side. Maybe he tells himself, this is unfortunate but necessary. Men can wrap a hard thing in very fine cloth, still hard. Amba leaves the court she meant to enter as a bride. No wedding drums greet her now, no garlands, no lamps, only the long echo of sandals on stone and the stare of servants who know enough to lower their eyes. Outside, the day is blinding. The sun presses down on the palace steps. The brass studs on the gate shine sharp as fire. Somewhere nearby, horses stamp and shake their bridles. The smell of dung, dust, and heated iron rises from the courtyard. Life goes on with astonishing indecency. A water seller shouts. Children laugh in an outer lane. A dog sleeps under a cart as if this were a completely ordinary afternoon. And perhaps for everyone except Amba, it is. So she turns back again. Where else is there to go? This is the bitter corridor now. Not one road, but two, and both closing behind her. Back to Hastinapura she goes. The second journey is worse than the first and colder than the one to Salva. Hope has gone thin. Shame rides with her like an extra companion, no one invited and no one can dismiss. The nights feel longer. Campfires smell sour. Even the stars seem remote, as if the sky itself has decided not to get involved. You travel with her through villages where women draw water at dawn and glance up at passing riders, through mango groves humming with bees, along riverbanks slick with morning mist, past shrines under banyan trees where bells ring in the breeze. The world is full of ordinary beauty. That can feel almost insulting when your own life has become a knot. By the time Hastinapura rises again on the horizon, it is less a destination than a last appeal. Bhishma receives her. Imagine that meeting. He had done what honor required, as he understood it. He had let her go. The matter, in his mind, should have been resolved. Instead, she stands before him once more, having been refused by the man she loved. The very solution that seemed righteous has failed. Duty, so neat in theory, has come back with dust on its face and grief in its mouth. Amba tells him what happened. She went to Salva. Salva rejected her. He would not take her. And now there is only one path left that the world might recognize. Bhishma must marry her himself. It is a terrible request because it is so reasonable within the wreckage. He caused this. He took her by force from the Swayamvara. He defeated the man she had chosen. He made her unplaceable in the eyes of the world. Now he must repair it. You can feel how simple it sounds when set beside how impossible it is. Bhishma listens. He is moved, perhaps, troubled, certainly. But there is that vow, always the vow. That mighty oath taken long ago by the river, the oath that made him Bhishma, the oath that froze his life into one shape forever. He had renounced kingship. He had renounced marriage. He had renounced children. He had built his very identity out of refusal. People had praised him for it until the praise rang like temple bronze. And now that bronze has become a locked gate, he tells her he cannot marry her, not because she is unworthy, not because he does not see the injustice, but because he has sworn never to take a wife. That vow is not something he can loosen for convenience, not even to mend the damage his own actions helped create. His promise binds him tighter than compassion can reach. You stand in that hall and hear it happen. It may even be spoken gently. That almost makes it harsher. A cruel man can be fought. A cold man can be hated with ease. But what do you do with a man who stands there sorrowful and unbending, telling you he cannot save you because he is too busy being noble? There is no comfortable answer to that. Only the sound of another door closing. Amba pleads. She reminds him that he brought her from Kashi. She reminds him she is rejected everywhere because of what happened under his protection, by his hand, under the banner of his family's duty. She is not asking for ornament now, or romance, or grand ceremony. She is asking not to be left outside the world. Bhishma does not yield. If anything, his firmness grows more solemn. He says a vow once made must be held. He says he cannot break it even for this. He may advise, he may regret, he may grieve. But marry her? No. Again no. Again the same clean blade of principle. You can almost feel the palace air thicken. Cool stone, incense gone faint, a draught moving through carved screens. Far away, a conch shell from some evening rite. Life in the palace, flowing neatly from one chamber to another, while in this one, a woman runs out of recognized futures. Amba has now been refused by the man who seized her, and by the man she loved. One would not take her because of pride. The other would not take her because of a vow. Between those two refusals, she is expected to disappear politely. This is where something changes in her, not all at once, not with thunder, not yet, but you can hear the first crack. Up to now, she has still been asking, still appealing, still believing someone, somewhere, will look directly at what happened and say, "This must be repaired. This cannot stand. A woman is not a garland to be carried off and then set down where convenient." Instead, she has met a wall in every direction. Salva claims injury. Bhishma claims duty. The world nods at both men, and Amba stands in the center of their righteousness, like someone left out in rain. There is a kind of exhaustion that comes after grief has knocked on every door and been refused entry. The tears stop helping. The pleading begins to taste bitter in the mouth. The heart, which has been bruised and pressed and shamed, starts changing shape around something harder. You can see it in the way she holds herself now. Back straighter, eyes different, the trembling gone or hidden so deep it no longer shows. Silk still drapes her shoulders, jewels still catch the lamplight. But the princess who rode from Kashi thinking love might set things right is slipping away. In her place, another self begins. Bhishma may not understand it then. How could he? Men protected by vows often do not hear the moment when the wound they refuse becomes destiny. Amba leaves his presence with no husband, no shelter in the old sense, no easy name for what she is now. Not maiden, not wife, not widow, something rawer, a life stalled between doors. Outside, evening has fallen over Hastinapura. You step with her into the courtyard where the last light hangs on the palace walls. Parrots screech in the trees before settling. The scent of jasmine thickens in the cooling air. Servants move with oil lamps cupped in their palms, little floating stars passing through corridors. Somewhere, rice is being washed for supper. Somewhere, a child is laughing. Somewhere, musicians begin a soft practice for an event that has nothing to do with this. The ordinary world continues. Of course it does. That too can sting. Amba stands under that enormous evening sky and understands something dreadful. No one is coming, not Salva with love stronger than shame, not Bhishma with duty softened by mercy, not the court with justice ready in its hands. If anything is to answer this wrong, it will have to rise from somewhere beyond the neat arrangements of kings. The night wind moves across the stone and lifts the edge of her veil. You are beside her when she turns from the palace lights, not back toward any wedding chamber, not toward any safe expected future, into something darker, into forests, vows, austerities, saints, fury, and fire. Not yet the ending, not yet the battlefield, but the beginning of that long, terrible road. Because once the world has told you no, in every formal voice it possesses, something inside you stops asking for permission. And under the jasmine-scented dark of Hastinapura, with one rejection behind her and another just delivered, Amba carries her unanswered life away from the palace. The lamps burn steadily behind her. Ahead, the night waits, and in that night, the wound begins learning how to survive longer than a single name. 3 days pass, nothing improves. The road out of Hastinapura dries beneath her feet, pale and dusty under a white sky. By noon, the heat presses down like a hand on the back of the neck. Her silk is gone now, traded for simpler cloth. The jewels are fewer. Anger remains. Anger does not need luggage. She walks past fields where farmers bend over green shoots, past wells where women laugh with water pots balanced on their hips, past shrines smeared with vermilion and old flowers. The ordinary world continues being offensively ordinary. You walk with her as the city sounds fade behind you. The last thing you hear is a temple bell and a cartwheel squealing against its axle. Then even that disappears, and there is only wind in dry grass and the crunch of grit underfoot. She does not yet know where to go. She only knows where not to remain. At first she seeks sages. That is what a person does when kings fail. You go where bark garments replace silk, where men who own nothing are supposed to be harder to frighten. You look for justice among people who have left court life behind. It sounds promising. It even smells promising. Wood smoke, kusa grass, river mud, neem leaves drying in the sun. But hermitages are full of human beings too. She comes to clearings where old ascetics sit beneath trees with ribs like bamboo slats and eyes bright as lamp flames. Deer graze without fear. Thin dogs sleep in the shade. Rice boils in blackened pots. Someone is always sweeping a path with a bundle of twigs. Someone is always chanting softly. Amba tells her story again. She tells it to one sage, then another, then 10. How Bhishma took her from Kashi by force of arms. How he released her when he learned of Salva. How Salva would not have her back. How Bhishma then refused her because of his vow. How every door shut while everyone claimed clean hands. Some pity her. Some praise her endurance. Some shake their heads and say that fate is hard. Useful, very useful. Exactly what every abandoned woman wants. One more old man, murmuring that fate is complicated. A few speak more sharply. They say Bhishma caused the ruin and Bhishma should repair it. Others say Salva failed her out of pride and should be ashamed. Others advise renunciation, as if she can simply fold her grief into a mat and sit on it. Amba listens. Then she keeps walking. The forests grow deeper, the paths narrow. Monsoon clouds gather and break. Rain comes down in silver sheets, beating the dust flat and waking the smell of wet earth. Her hair clings to her back. Leeches wait in the grass like tiny unpaid tax collectors. You can feel the season turn around her. Cicadas whine in the heat. Frogs begin their wet-throated songs at dusk. Smoke from cooking fires hangs low in the evening air, blue and soft between the trees. She eats little. She sleeps less. What began as heartbreak hardens into something leaner. Tapas, not comfort, not healing in the way people mean when they say the word lightly. Heat made inward. Will tightened until it cuts. She stands in cold river water at dawn. She fasts. She keeps silence for days. She sits beneath the sun until the skin on her shoulders darkens and the mind begins doing strange things. The sages watch her and begin to understand that this is no passing storm. This woman is building a weapon out of herself. One day, she reaches an ashram where her mother's father, the royal sage Hotravahana, is staying among forest dwellers. He is old now, with matted hair the color of ash and a face marked by years of prayer and disappointment. When he sees her, the air changes. At last, someone who knows her name before she speaks it, that nearly undoes her. She bows. He lifts her up. He looks at her worn feet, her austere dress, the exhaustion under her eyes, and he hears everything, all of it. Kashi, Bhishma, Salva, the refusals, the wandering, the evening smells of rain-soaked leaves and clarified butter from the sacrificial fire. Nearby, a peacock complains from a branch as if this family sorrow is personally inconveniencing him. Hotravahana does not tell her to forget. Bless the old man for that much. He tells her there may yet be one person in the world who can challenge Bhishma and force an answer from him. Parashurama, the name lands like iron. In the hermitage, even the younger ascetics go quiet when they hear it. Parashurama, son of Jamadagni, axe-bearing scourge of Kshatriyas, warrior sage, terrible in wrath, yet anchored in tapas deeper than kingdoms. A man who once shook the earth so hard that kings learned to sleep lightly. If anyone can make Bhishma bend, it is he. Amba seizes that hope at once. Not because hope is gentle. This hope has teeth. Hotravahana sends word through the forest channels known to sages and wanderers. News moves strangely in those days, not by drum alone, not by royal messenger alone, but by ascetics, pilgrims, hunters, ferrymen, women at wells, merchants at roadside shelters. A name crosses 100 miles on foot and somehow arrives faster than a chariot. Soon, another figure enters the hermitage. Akritavrana, companion and disciple of Parashurama, dust-covered from travel, carrying the calm alertness of a man used to standing near dangerous holiness. He hears Amba's plea. He hears it all. The sun is going down behind sal trees, and the smoke from the sacred fire curls into the darkening air. Crickets begin. Somewhere, a cowbell clinks. The whole evening feels suspended, as if the forest itself is listening. Akritavrana tells her she has done rightly to come. He says Bhishma's act cannot simply be washed away with rules and vows. He promises to lead her to Parashurama. At that, for the first time in a long while, Amba lets herself breathe fully. Not peace, never that, but direction. You stand beside her in the half-light and feel the shift. The road is no kinder than before, yet it is no longer shapeless. It points towards something, toward a mountain of a man with an axe and a temper and enough power to make princes regret breakfast. They journey to meet him. The path winds through forests thick with sandal and teak, across streams cold enough to bite the ankles, over ridges where the wind smells of stone and pine. Mornings begin with mist hanging between the trunks. By noon, the sun is bright on leaves, slick from rain. At night, jackals call from far off, and the stars appear in torn gaps above the canopy. Parashurama is found at last in a place austere enough to suit him. No palace, no banner, just a sacred ground, ringed with trees, a clearing marked by discipline. Weapons rest nearby as naturally as water pots. Fire altars stand blackened by long use. The air carries smoke, wild basil, and sharpened steel. He is older than rage, and somehow still full of it. Broad-shouldered, ascetic, terrible, with eyes that seem to look through excuses before they are spoken. The axe is near him. It always is. You get the feeling he could be peacefully reciting mantras one moment and ending a dynasty the next. Some men contain contradictions. Parashurama wears them openly. Amba bows low and tells him everything. No trembling embroidery, no courtly polishing, just the hard road of facts. He listens. That alone is powerful. She has been spoken over, redirected, returned, rejected, pitied, advised. Now at last, a great one listens without interruption. His face darkens as she speaks of the Swayamvara, of Salva's refusal, of Bhishma's vow standing there like a wall no one can pass. When she finishes, the fire cracks between them. Parashurama decides. He will summon Bhishma. The message goes out, and Bhishma comes. Of course he comes. He's many things, but not a coward who hides behind curtains. He arrives with proper respect, for Parashurama had once instructed him in arms. Teacher and student face each other beneath the open sky, while sages gather at the edges like birds before a storm. The smell of trampled grass rises under many feet. Sunlight flashes on armor. Bees move through nearby blooms with total indifference to human catastrophe. Bhishma bows to his teacher. Parashurama tells him what must be done. Take Amba, repair the wrong, marriage, or some rightful remedy that restores her honor and future. Bhishma stands very still. He cannot. His vow remains iron. He had renounced marriage forever for his father's sake, and that vow is not cloth he can change with the season. He says he released Amba when he learned of her prior choice. He says he cannot now marry her. He says duty binds him. Amba hears the same stone again, only carved with holier letters. Parashurama presses harder. Bhishma refuses again. Around them, the wind rises. Leaves turn their pale undersides. The world feels like a breath held too long. Then there is only one road left: combat. No one wants to name it first. Everyone sees it anyway. Teacher against student. Sage against vow. Axe against bow. The kind of meeting that makes rivers slow down to listen. They choose Kurukshetra for the encounter, that ancient field already old with memory, long before the famous war will one day arrive there. Open land, wide sky, enough room for two immense wills to strike at each other without knocking down somebody's mango orchard. Amba goes there too. How could she not? You are with her when she first sees the field. Dry grasses ripple in the wind. Dust skims low over the earth. The horizon stretches broad and flat, with distant standards flickering in the sunlight. Priests murmur prayers. Chariots stand ready. Warriors, sages, and kings gather in cautious semicircles, each one pretending composure and failing in private. The air tastes of dust, copper, and expectation. Parashurama takes the field like a storm, wearing human shape. Bhishma mounts his chariot. White, horses restless, banner snapping overhead, conscious sound, and then the impossible begins. Their first exchange is bright and swift, arrows meeting in the air with little sharp sounds like dry bamboo splitting in fire. Bhishma moves with the grace of terrible training, every motion exact. Parashurama answers with force, so raw it seems to bend the daylight. Dust leaps from the ground, birds burst from nearby scrub and wheel away. You feel the vibration through your feet, even standing far back, as if the field itself is muttering that this is too much. Day after day they fight. At dawn, the eastern sky goes saffron, then gold, and already the chariots are circling. By noon, the heat shimmers above the earth. At dusk, the light turns red and low, and still the contest has not ended. Nights are full of murmurs, oil lamps, tense speculation, and the weary chewing of horses too noble to complain. Amba watches all of it. Hope does strange things inside her during those days. It surges when Parashurama presses forward. It drops when Bhishma stands unshaken. It rises again. It falls again. Her heart is being used like a drum. The combat grows more fearsome. Astras are invoked. Sacred weapons flash and answer one another in the sky. Fire meets rain. Wind scatters smoke. The very light seems to change color as divine powers are called and countered. Men shield their faces. Horses scream through their nostrils and stamp. Standards whip violently in winds that appeared from nowhere. Still, neither falls. Kurukshetra takes it all. The ground is scored by wheels, darkened by sweat, littered with broken shafts and torn pennants. Evening after evening, the smell of churned earth and hot leather hangs heavy, while onlookers stare at the two undefeated figures and begin to wonder whether vows and curses have made both men larger than ordinary endings. One day becomes 5, 5 becomes 10, 10 becomes many. The count stretches toward the unbelievable. 22 days, they say, or more if dread is measuring. Long enough for camps to become temporary villages. Long enough for cooks to run out of patience. Long enough for gossip to become theology, and back again. You can imagine the scene at supper fires. Someone whispering that Bhishma looked tired today. Someone else insisting Parashurama's strike shook the horizon. Someone muttering that if these two continue, the rest of humanity may as well pack up and go home. Yet beneath the anxious wonder lies Amba's single need. Let it end. Let one man yield. Let someone, for once, bear the weight she has been forced to carry. But no clean ending comes. Bhishma honors his teacher and still resists him. Parashurama fights for justice and still cannot break the vow-bound prince. They move through weapon after weapon, brilliance after brilliance, until the field seems exhausted by witnessing. At last, the struggle approaches a brink. Bhishma prepares a terrible celestial weapon, one that could bring the contest to a fearful close. The sages grow alarmed. Narada himself is set to come. Great seers intervene. Voices rise. Enough, enough. This meeting has already shaken heaven and earth. It cannot be allowed to pass beyond all restraint. Parashurama, for all his fire, knows when a boundary has been reached. He stops. The stillness after is almost worse than the noise. No victory cry, no triumphant banner, just hot wind crossing a scarred field while both sides understand the bitter truth. Even Parashurama cannot give Amba what she came for. He turns to her with sorrow and tells her plainly, he has done all he can. Bhishma cannot be compelled by him further. The path of force has reached its wall. Imagine hearing that after all this. Imagine crossing forests, fasting, pleading, enduring, praying, watching the two greatest warriors of the age batter destiny itself for your sake, and still being left with empty hands. You are beside her in that moment. Dust sticks to sweat at the edge of your neck. The sun is lowering, thick and red through the haze. Men are already beginning the practical work of departure, because armies and sages always become practical the instant someone else's heart breaks. Amba does not collapse. That would almost be a relief. Instead, she grows quieter. Quieter can be more frightening. Parashurama blesses her and departs. Bhishma returns to his road, burdened in his own way, armored in oath, unreachable as ever. The assembled kings drift away, wheels roll, hooves thud, voices recede. Soon the field is large and empty again. Only the wind remains to discuss what happened. Amba turns from men entirely. No king, no lover, no teacher, no warrior, no court. She goes northward into harsher country, toward lonely places where devotion is stripped of ornament. The land rises and changes. Forests thin in places, then deepen again. Rivers run colder. Hills stand blue in the distance under a harder sky. Shrines cling to rocks and riverbanks, small and smoke-dark, marked by bells greened with weather and offerings left by trembling hands. She seeks Shiva. If the world of men has no answer, then she will carry her grievance to the Lord, who sits with serpents around his throat and ash on his skin, the God who is reached by those who can endure. Her austerities become fierce. She lives on fruits, then on leaves, then on almost nothing. She stands on one leg for long hours. She keeps her arms raised. She remains through heat and rain and cold. Ants climb over her feet. Birds nest in branches above her. Moonlight whitens the stones around her at night. At dawn, the river smokes in the chill, and the first temple bell rings across the water like a drop of bronze. The body protests. The mind protests louder. Still she stays. You are there in those long seasons, and time changes texture. Days stop feeling separate. They stack. Summer burns. Monsoon drenches everything until the world smells of moss, wet bark, and river silt. Winter arrives thin and sharp, with mornings cold enough to turn breath visible. Her cloth roughens. Her skin grows lean. Her eyes become something bright and distant. Pilgrims pass and whisper. Some leave flowers, some stare, some are afraid. They should be. This is not grief anymore in the ordinary sense. This is a vow feeding on years. At last, Shiva appears to her. Not always with thunder, not always with a cosmic performance large enough to flatten a hill. Sometimes, divinity comes with a stillness so complete that everything else reveals itself as noise. The air changes first. The leaves stop moving. The sound of the river seems to recede and deepen at once. The smell of wild datura and sacred smoke sharpens. Light gathers strangely around the shrine stones. Amba opens her eyes, and he is there. Matted hair, crescent moon, terrible calm. Lord of endings and beginnings, the one before whom pride becomes very small and resolve becomes very clear. She bows and makes her request, not comfort, not release from memory, One thing only, Bhishma must fall, and through her, Shiva grants the boon. Not in this life, in another, she will be born again. And in that later birth, she will become the cause of Bhishma's end. It is both gift and wound, justice, yes, but delayed beyond the edge of the life she is living now. Still, she accepts it. What else is there to do? When you have burned away everything softer, even a future promise can feel like water. Shiva leaves. The wind returns. The trees move again. But the world is no longer the same. Amba rises from her austerity, knowing that time has widened beneath her feet. She is no longer fighting for one abandoned princess's future. That future is gone. Ash already. She is carrying something across births now, a purpose with a longer memory than flesh. There is one more thing she does before this life closes. From another act of devotion, she receives a garland of blue lotuses, unfading, strange, and charged with destiny. It is said that whoever wears that garland will become the destroyer of Bhishma, so she takes it from court to court. Picture her arriving in royal halls once more, though not as she once did, not as a bride, not as a daughter under protection, as an omen with dust on her feet and eyes that make comfortable men reach for excuses. She enters assemblies where sandalwood smoke curls from censers and musicians fall silent mid-note. Kings in bright silk and gold listen as she tells them what the garland means. Take it, she says. Wear it. Face Bhishma. Win immortal fame if you dare. No one dares. Some look away. Some praise Bhishma too much, which is another form of fear. Some mutter about impossibility. A few probably remember urgent appointments elsewhere. Very tragic. Desperately important. Must inspect the stables at once. Amba leaves each court with the garland still in her hands. The blue petals never fade. At last, she comes to Panchala, to the court of King Drupada. The palace rises broad and stately, its walls washed pale in the sun, banners stirring overhead. Servants move through cool corridors, carrying trays of flowers and polished vessels. Somewhere in the inner gardens, Jasmine climbs over red stone. She stands in the hall and makes the same offer. No champion steps forward. So she hangs the garland there, on a pillar, in public, visible, waiting. The petals remain fresh as dawn lotuses, though the days pass. Courtiers begin avoiding that part of the hall. Servants glance at it and then glance away. It becomes one of those objects every palace develops sooner or later, the thing no one mentions and everyone knows. A year passes, then another. Dust gathers on beams. Kings come and go. Children grow taller. Monsoon rain drums on the roofs. Dry season returns, hot and shimmering. The garland hangs unchanged, waiting. Amba's own path is nearing its end. The promise has been given. The future birth is set. This life, so torn and denied and sharpened, has become a bridge and almost nothing else. Some say she prepares a pyre. Some say she enters fire by her own will, carrying Shiva's boon like a final ember into the next birth. However it happened, the old name moves toward its close under open sky. And yet, the image that lingers is not flame. It is that garland. You can see it now in the dim cool of Panchala's hall, blue as twilight water, impossible in its freshness. Lamps flicker nearby. Dust motes turn in shafts of afternoon sun. Sandalwood and old stone scent the air. People pass it carefully, as if afraid destiny might brush their shoulder. No one wears it, not yet. It waits through seasons, through whispers, through the slow grinding of years. It waits for the neck it was meant to touch, And in that patient hanging, in those flowers that refuse to wither, Amba's fury becomes stranger than anger. It becomes time itself, biding its moment in a royal hall, still, unfaded, certain, waiting. Years pass, kingdoms shift, and still the vow has not finished speaking. It simply returns in a smaller body with sharper eyes. In Panchala, the palace wakes before sunrise. Servants pad through long corridors with brass lamps cupped in their hands. Priests rinse stone altars with cool water. The kitchens begin first with smoke, then cumin, then the warm, thick smell of boiling milk. Outside, peacocks complain from the walls as if royal life has personally offended them. And in one inner chamber, beneath white cotton curtains and the low murmur of anxious women, a child is born to King Drupada's house. A child who will change everything. Not an ordinary child. The air itself feels watchful. You can almost feel it standing there in the room beside the nurses and the old midwife, the faint pressure of something unfinished, something that has traveled farther than bones and breath should travel. Oil lamps tremble. A conch sounds far away for the dawn rites. The baby cries once, sharp and indignant, as if arrival was not a request, but an argument resumed. Drupada is told that destiny has entered his line. That kind of news does not soothe the father. He comes to see the infant with sandal paste still fresh on his brow and sleep not yet rubbed from his eyes. The child is small, red-faced, tightly furious in the way only newborns and kings can be. But around that tiny face, the elders speak carefully. Too carefully. They mention signs, old promises, things half heard from ascetics, carried in scraps from forests, whispered by those who listen too closely to fate. A daughter, they say, and not only a daughter. The name given is Shikhandi. It settles over the child like a garment, much too heavy. In the days that follow, the palace becomes a hive of soft voices and unfinished sentences. Women pass each other in the passageways and lower their speech. Ministers bow to Drupada and study his expression before saying anything at all. Even the musicians in the outer court seem to strike their vina strings more gently, as if too loud a note might disturb whatever strange old current has entered the house. Because this is the trouble with prophecy. It never arrives neatly folded. Sometimes it comes wrapped in silk and confusion. Sometimes it arrives in a nursery and refuses to explain itself. The child grows. At first, Shikhandi is only what children are. Warm weight, milk sleep, clutching fingers, sudden tears, soft hair scented with sesame oil. Nurses bounce the baby on their hips. Wet footprints patter across polished stone after baths. Tiny bracelets chime. The world, for a little while, is simple enough to fit inside a cradle painted with lotuses. But the grown-ups never quite relax. You notice it if you stand in those cool corridors long enough. The way a nurse goes quiet when Drupada enters. The way old attendants make protective signs over the baby when they think no one is looking. The way the king sometimes lingers at the doorway, one hand on the carved frame, staring not with tenderness alone, but with calculation, worry, memory he does not own. A rumor has already begun taking shape in Panchala. It moves like incense smoke. Some say the child is born for a purpose connected to Bhishma of the Kurus. Some say an old wrong has taken breath again. Some say Shiva's word is ripening in Drupada's house. Some say nothing at all, which in palaces often means they know quite a lot. Drupada hears enough to decide one thing. This child must not be ordinary. So Shikhandi is raised beneath a tension. Even the toys can feel. There are carved wooden elephants in the nursery, painted balls, little clay birds. But beside these, too early and too deliberately, come other things. A small bow without a sharp string, a practice staff polished smooth. Stories not of gentle queens spinning garlands, but of warriors, vows, rival kings, and battles decided by impossible turns. The child does not understand. How could she? One day, she is laughing at a monkey in the mango court. The next, she is being watched by tutors as she grips a tiny bow with solemn hands. Children accept oddness more easily than adults. If everyone around you behaves as though your life is an unfinished sentence, you simply learn to breathe in the commas. Seasons turn. The palace of Panchala shines differently in each one. In monsoon, the courtyards smell of wet stone and neem leaves and rainwater drums from roof spouts into lotus ponds. In summer, heat lies across the terraces like folded brass. In winter, thin morning mist hangs over the gardens, and servants bring woolen wraps before dawn. Shikhandi runs through all of it. Bare feet slap against red floor tiles. Anklets ring. She climbs where she should not climb. She startles pigeons from the grain court. She listens outside closed doors. She learns quickly which servants tell stories well and which ones make everything sound like an account ledger. And sometimes, without warning, she goes still. It happens first beside a mirror. She cannot be more than 5. A nurse is braiding her hair, and the child, half bored, half drowsy in the afternoon heat, stares at her own reflection in a polished bronze plate. Then, all at once, her face changes. The usual restlessness drops away. Her eyes narrow, not like a child's, but like someone listening for hoofbeats very far off. The braid slips from the nurse's fingers. Shikhandi lifts a hand to her throat. No garland is there, only skin, warm from the day. But the child shudders as if flowers colder than water have just touched her. A moment later, it passes. She asks for sweet cakes. That is the unnerving part. Memory comes like lightning and leaves no fire behind that anyone else can see. You are in the room when it happens often enough to feel the strangeness yourself. One instant, she is quarreling over a toy chariot. The next, she is staring at a visiting king's armor with naked dislike. She hears the name Hastinapura and turns white. She sees a wedding pavilion being decorated and becomes so furious, she kicks over a tray of vermilion and bursts into tears she cannot explain. No one around her knows what to do with such weather. Drupada tries priests, he tries astrologers, he tries silence, which is every royal household's favorite medicine and almost never cures anything. The priests mark charts and murmur of Mars, of old karma, of fierce stars rising where gentle ones should have stood. The astrologers study the child's birth hour, exchange glances, and begin sentences with such care that you can hear caution clicking between their teeth. They say she is marked for greatness. They say she is marked for conflict. They say the two are often roommates, very comforting. Shikhandi grows older. With age comes training, and with training comes friction. At first, it is subtle. A tutor corrects the angle of her wrist on a practice bow. Another shows her how to stand with feet apart and spine straight. A weapons master, grizzled and patient, tries to teach a room full of royal children that discipline begins in the body before it reaches the mind. Most children hear this and immediately begin poking each other with sticks. Shikhandi listens too closely. She practices long after the others have run off toward fruit or gossip or mischief. She holds the bow until her forearm trembles. She insists on riding lessons in the hotter part of the day, when even the horses look mildly insulted by existence. She wants the sword forms repeated, again, again, again. The instructors exchange looks. A princess may be spirited. A princess may even be skilled. But this intensity has another taste to it. Not ambition exactly, not delight either, more like recognition, as if the body is learning what the soul has not forgotten. You stand at the edge of the training yard in the dry season and watch. Dust rise around her ankles. The practice ground smells of sun-baked earth, horse sweat, and oiled leather. A kite circles overhead. Bronze bells jingle from harness straps. Shikhandi looses arrow after arrow at a straw target until the red cloth center is ragged. Then, for one breath, she lowers the bow and looks not at the target, but beyond it, past the yard, past the palace wall, past Panchala itself. Her face is not a child's face then. It is older, bitterer, almost startled. The moment closes. She knocks another arrow. Inside the palace, the whispers change shape as she changes shape. When she is small, people murmur about prophecy. When she nears youth, they murmur about danger, because royal children do not belong entirely to themselves. Their bodies are alliances waiting to happen. Their names are promises. Their futures are bargaining chips wrapped in silk. And Shikhandi, under all the ordinary anxieties of noble birth, carries another uncertainty that no one can smooth away with jewels. How should she be seen? How should she be presented? What exactly has returned in Drupada's house? These questions gather in corners like summer flies. Servants talk while grinding sandalwood. Courtiers talk while pretending to discuss grain. Old women in the women's quarters talk while sorting flowers for worship, because sorting flowers is excellent cover for discussing things that could start trouble. They speak of the child's gait, of her appetite for weapons, of the way she does not sit easily among girls sewing garlands, nor comfortably among boys boasting over hunting dogs. They speak of how her temper can blaze over some insult no one else even noticed. They speak of dreams, because Shikhandi begins to dream, not every night. That would be easier, almost. No, the dreams arrive erratically, like monsoon storms that miss one village and flood the next. On some nights, she sleeps like any child, sprawled, exhausted, one hand flung over her head. On others, she wakes before dawn, with her breath coming hard and the sheets twisted around her legs. In the dreams, there is always motion. A chariot wheel, a hall of kings, jewels shaking against the throat, hands reaching, but not in time. Then later come other dreams, forest smoke, bark garments, prayer beads, feet blistered on pilgrimage roads, the smell of ash after sacrificial fire, and once, only once, a face in meditation darkness, terrible and calm, promising not now, but later. She tells no one at first. Children know when adults are already carrying too many expectations. Add strange dreams to that pile, and suddenly everyone begins treating you like a shrine with legs. Eventually, one old nurse hears her crying out in sleep and coaxes the truth from her piece by piece. The nurse crosses herself with holy ash and tells the queen. The queen tells Drupada. Drupada grows quieter. That is saying something, because kings already spend half their lives in silences designed to intimidate other people. This one is different. This is the silence of a man standing too close to the machinery of fate and realizing it has no interest in his schedule. He watches Shikhandi more carefully after that. He arranges better teachers. He restricts certain visitors. He begins, in subtle ways, to shape the child's life towards secrecy. Not full secrecy. Palaces are physically incapable of full secrecy. Put 10 people under one roof, and even the walls start gossiping. But guardedness, yes, controlled appearances, selective explanations, a sense that the household is carrying a vessel full to the brim, and everyone must walk very carefully. You feel it most during festivals, when the palace opens and the public floods near. At spring celebrations, musicians fill the courtyards, and flower sellers arrive with baskets of jasmine and marigold. The air grows thick with camphor, fried sweets, crushed petals, and the sweat of 100 bodies pressed into celebration. Children race in bright silks, priests chant, elephants are painted, everybody smiles as if joy was simple. But even there, Shikhandi draws glances, some admiring, some puzzled, some sharp enough to leave marks without touching. Children can be cruel in the cheerful, absent-minded way only children manage. They ask why she prefers the archery grounds. They laugh when she rejects ornaments. They mimic the seriousness in her face. Then, when she turns on them with a fury too sudden and too clean, they scatter like sparrows and later claim she frightened them. Adults are rarely better. A visiting lady once pats her hand and says she will soften with age. A visiting prince jokes that Panchala raises daughters who look ready to raid neighboring kingdoms. It is meant lightly, many foolish remarks are. Shikhandi smiles with such cold politeness that the prince nearly swallows his beetle leaf whole. You are standing by a pillar when it happens, and honestly, he deserves it. Still, after moments like these, the child withdraws. That becomes her habit. Public stillness, private unrest. She learns to hold her face like a curtain. She learns which answer ends conversation fastest. She learns that shame is a garment others try to drape over you, whether it fits or not. She also learns that training quiets the mind better than court manners ever will. So she turns again and again toward the yard, the stables, the range. The horses accept her easily. Animals have very little patience for social confusion. Either you approach with steadiness or you do not. Either your hand is calm on the neck or it is not. A horse never pauses to wonder whether destiny has put the wrong expectations on the wrong child. It only flicks an ear and decides whether you smell trustworthy. Shikhandi smells of dust, effort, and stubbornness. The mares approve. Dawn after dawn, she rides. The eastern sky pales over Panchala. Mist lifts from the fields beyond the walls. Stable boys yawn and rub straw from their hair. Leather creaks. Hooves thud softly on packed ground. Shikhandi mounts while the world is still grey, and for an hour, the palace cannot ask anything of her except balance. You ride beside her sometimes in the cool half-light of imagination, and the relief is almost physical. No whispers out here, no polished opinions, only breath steaming from the horses, the smell of hay and wet earth, and the rhythm of motion carrying thought farther from the body. But memory does not stay behind so easily. One morning, crossing a shallow stream beyond the outer gardens, she freezes in the saddle. The horse tosses its head, annoyed by the sudden halt. Water moves around the mare's fetlocks with a silver sound. Kingfishers flash blue in the reeds. Shikhandi is staring at the current as if she has seen another river beneath it. Her lips part. For a second you think she might speak a name not used in this life. Instead, she presses her heels to the horse and rides on too fast, splashing everyone behind her. The stable boy mutters, "The mare forgives nothing." Back at the palace, the old garland still hangs in the hall. Yes, still. Years have not touched it. That impossible wreath, the one no one will wear, remains blue and fresh and faintly fragrant, suspended in its quiet place, as if time itself has agreed to step around it. Children are warned not to play near it. Servants dust the floor beneath it without raising their eyes. Guests notice it and choose wisely not to ask. Shikhandi notices it more than anyone. At first, from a distance, then nearer. Then one evening, while oil lamps bloom one by one down the corridor and the palace smells of wick smoke and evening jasmine, she stops before it alone. The hall is cool. Outside, parrots are making their last scandalous noises before sleep. Somewhere, a conch sounds for twilight prayer. She reaches up. Her fingers do not touch the flowers. Not yet. But the air between skin and petals trembles. You can feel the charge of it from across the hall. Recognition, fear, relief, fury. All of them braided together so tightly, they are almost one thing. The child does not know why her eyes have filled with tears. She only knows this garland belongs to something inside her that is older than her own voice. A servant appears at the far end of the passage. The moment breaks. Shikhandi drops her hand and walks away with the rigid dignity of someone trying not to run. After that, the memories come more often. Not complete, never kind enough for that. Fragments only. A king's face turning away, armor gleaming in a wedding hall, the feeling of being talked about as though absent while standing in plain sight. A vow, cold as iron, a long road through forest heat, the smell of bark cloth in rain, a figure blazing with ascetic force, firelight, promise, then waking, then breakfast. It is almost insulting. Imagine carrying the shards of another life and still having to attend lessons in statecraft before noon. Royal childhood does not pause for spiritual upheaval. There are genealogies to memorize, rituals to observe, posture corrections to endure, ceremonies where you must stand exactly so while adults discuss your future as if you're a decorative pillar with excellent hearing. Shikhandi endures it, mostly. There are flashes. One day, a tutor remarks that vows are the foundation of honor. The room is hot. Bees hum lazily beyond the lattice. Ink dries on palm leaf manuscripts. Everything is sleepy and harmless until that sentence lands. Shikhandi's reed pen snaps in her fingers. The tutor startles. The child says nothing, not one word. But her face has gone so pale that even the tutor, who has made a career out of ignoring emotional weather, changes the lesson to land taxes. A wise choice. Drupada sees enough by then to make a decision deeper than caution. He begins to have Shikhandi trained not merely well, but royally, not as an indulgence, as preparation. Masters of chariot driving, archery, sword forms, battlefield signals, the management of horses, the reading of troop movement, the weight of armor, the endurance required to stand in the sun for hours with discipline unbroken. Those in the palace who understand, those who do not speculate wildly. This is how tension matures in a court, quietly, persistently, like ghee heating before spices are thrown in. You do not see the full flare until the moment it happens, but the scent changes long before, and Shikhandi, at the center of it, grows into the unease as a tree grows around a buried blade. There are days of confidence, days when the body feels aligned, the skill clean, the mind free. Then there are days when identity itself feels like borrowed clothing, too tight at the shoulders, too loose at the chest, cut for someone imagined by other people, fastened by custom, tugged by expectation. Never entirely yours. No one around her has language gentle enough for this, so she says little. Instead, she trains, watches, remembers in fragments. The past life does not return as a neat story. It returns as ache, as recoil, as instinctive hatred of certain names, as a pulse of grief in wedding music, as certainty, without evidence, that Bhishma still walks the earth and that whatever lies between them has not ended. You feel it with her one evening from the palace roof. The sky is copper at sunset. Smoke from cook fires lifts in blue threads over Panchala. Temple bells ring from the city below. The stone beneath your hands still holds the day's heat. Shikhandi stands at the parapet, looking west. Far away, beyond fields and rivers and roads, lies Hastinapura. Farther still, though no one knows it yet, lies Kurukshetra. For now there is only evening wind, carrying dust and the faint sweetness of night-blooming flowers. Her face is calm. Too calm. It is the calm of someone listening to footsteps approaching from another lifetime. Behind her, the palace glows with lamps. Before her, the dark slowly gathers. And in that gathering dark, before any battlefield is chosen, before conches split the dawn, before old men lower bows and kingdoms pay for ancient pride, another struggle is already underway. Not in a war camp, in a single life, in a young heart asked to carry memory, prophecy, shame, and purpose all at once. Shikhandi stands there between childhood and destiny, between one name and the next, while the wind moves through the banners above Panchala's walls. Below, servants laugh over spilled grain. A flute starts somewhere in the lower court. The smell of rice and clarified butter rises warm into the cooling air. And the child who was not meant to be simple, who cannot remain only what the cradle named, keeps watching the horizon as if it owes an answer. Not yet. That comes in time. For now, the palace sleeps around an unfinished soul. The Garland waits in its shadowed hall. The training yard gathers dawn after dawn. And somewhere deep beneath Shikhandini's steady breathing, the old fire shifts, opens one eye, and remembers. But destiny is not finished rearranging the body that must carry this memory. One night in the forest, even the moon seems to lean closer. The trouble begins with a wedding. Of course it does. In Panchala, whispers move faster than horses. A child raised as a prince can hide many things inside palace walls, but marriages have a nasty habit of dragging private arrangements into bright public light. Drupada had raised Shikhandi as Shikhandi. He armored the name, trained the posture, taught the court what to say and what not to say. For years it held, barely. Then came a bride. She was a princess from Dasharna, sent with perfumes and silk and all the careful ceremony kingdoms use when they want alliance, wrapped in jasmine. The marriage was arranged. Auspicious dates were chosen. Priests murmured over clarified butter. Courtyards were washed with sandalwood water. Drums rolled, gold flashed. Everyone smiled the thin smile of people balancing a pot on their heads while pretending to dance. You can feel the strain in the palace air. It smells of incense, hot oil, anxious sweat hidden beneath lotus paste. Servants hurry with garlands. Musicians tune strings with trembling fingers. Somewhere a tray falls, and 3 people jump as if struck. Shikhandi goes through the rites like someone walking beside a dream. Garland, fire, circumambulation, blessings, rice scattered underfoot, the bride veiled, jeweled, perfumed, the prince solemn, straight-backed, unreadable. If you stand near enough, you hear the faint click of ornaments against arm rings and the slower sound beneath it, the careful breathing of a life approaching a cliff. Night falls, doors close, and before dawn, the secret bursts out like monsoon water through a cracked embankment. The bride knows. How she knows, by what exact glance or touch or startled stillness, the palace never says plainly. It does not matter. She knows enough. Fear races through her first, then outrage, then the kind of humiliation royal households cannot bear because they are built entirely out of appearances. A message flies to her father. Another flies through the women's quarters. By sunrise, the news is everywhere and nowhere, which is how palace scandal works. Nobody says it openly. Everybody knows. The cooks know. The guards know. The stable boys definitely know, because stable boys know everything by breakfast. Even the parrots in the mango court look over as if they have opinions. King Hiranyavarman of Dasharna receives the report and erupts. Not gradually, not diplomatically. He sends back word, full of fury. He has been deceived, his daughter insulted, his house mocked before the world. If Panchala thinks this can be covered with sweet words and clarified butter, Panchala is dreaming. War is threatened. Banners are ordered unpacked. Drupada reads the message and goes cold. You can picture him in the audience hall, fingers tightening on the carved lion arm of the throne. Lamps burn steadily. Courtiers look at the floor. No one coughs. No one moves. Outside, peacocks scream in the gardens, sounding like somebody laughing at exactly the wrong time. He knows what this means. Not just insult, exposure. The prophecy that hung over his child like a second shadow now steps into daylight. The court arrangement, the guarded language, the elaborate hope that destiny might somehow sort itself politely without embarrassing anyone. Gone. In one night. Shikhandi hears the same message and feels the walls closing in. All those years of lessons, all the glances, all the half-finished memories that came like smoke and vanished again. All the discipline of standing, speaking, fighting, enduring, and still the old trap returns. A life set in motion by a woman denied her place is now cornered again by the same cruel little machinery of marriage, shame, and public honor. No wonder the chest feels tight. No wonder the corridors seem too narrow. You are there in the dark before dawn, when the lamps are low and the palace smells of cooling stone and wilted flowers. You can almost hear Shikhandi deciding, not with drama, with exhaustion. Better to leave than watch Panchala burn on this account. Better to disappear into trees than stand in court while men argue over what body ought to mean. So Shikhandi slips away. No fanfare, no royal escort, no shining horse with embroidered reins. Just the quiet departure of someone who has had enough of being the center of everybody else's panic. A cloak, a weapon or two, breath clouding in the last cool hour before sunrise, sand under sandals, then the road, then the scrub, then the forest swallowing the path. By the time the eastern sky pales, Panchala is behind. Ahead, only trees. The forest receives fugitives without questions. That is one of its finest qualities. Tall sal trunks rise silver in moonlight, and then brown in dawn. Creepers hang like untied braids. Wet leaves brush the arms. The smell changes with every 100 steps. Damp earth, crushed tulsi underfoot, wild jasmine somewhere unseen, old bark warmed by yesterday's sun. Monkeys complain from high branches. A deer flashes once between shadows and is gone. The world is wide enough here that even disgrace begins to lose its sharp edges. But grief comes along anyway. Shikhandi walks deeper in. Sometimes the old memory flickers close. Another rejection, another closed door, another life told to go elsewhere. Sometimes it fades, leaving only the simple ache of hunger and fatigue and not knowing where to sleep. The body that was trained in palaces now crouches beside roots and drinks from streams. Fine silk is a poor forest companion. Thorn bushes do not care about rank. There is a kind of honesty in that. By the second night, the moon has grown bright and white enough to turn clearings into silver pools. Wind moves softly in the upper leaves. Insects chant. Somewhere farther off, a night bird gives one slow, lonely call. And in that forest, under that moon, stands a dwelling not meant for ordinary eyes. It is the house of the Yaksha Stunakarna. Not a hut, not exactly a palace either, something between. Something touched by another order of being. Its posts shine pale, as if rubbed with moon milk. Vines flower over the doorway, though no hand tends them. Tiny lamps burn without smoke. The air around it is cool, scented with sandal and fresh rain, though the sky is dry. You know at once this is no human residence. The hair rises a little on your arms. Shikhandi sees it too. At first, there is caution. Forest spirits are not to be approached lightly. Yet despair is a bold sort of hunger. When every human arrangement has become a snare, a person may start hoping for help from the hidden ones. So Shikhandi approaches the threshold. The Yaksha appears. Stunakarna is not frightening in the way soldiers are frightening. No clatter of steel, no hard eyes measuring weakness. The presence is stranger than that, bright and soft at once, beautiful in the unsettling forest way that makes you remember trees are alive and older than cities. Jewels gleam faintly at wrist and throat. The face carries stillness, and the stillness carries power. He asks the wanderer's trouble. Shikhandi tells it. Not every thought, perhaps, but enough. Born into prophecy, raised under strain, given a marriage that became disaster, a kingdom now endangered, a self that does not fit the narrow baskets others keep trying to force it into. Underneath all that, an older current moving through the bones, old as fire, an insult, an unburied grief. The night listens, leaves stir. A lamp flame bends and stands straight again. Stunakarna is moved. Some beings hear misery and step back from it as if it were contagious. Some hear it and feel their own hearts loosen. The Yaksha is of the second kind. He sees before him not deception but sorrow, not scandal but someone stranded between forms, hunted by expectations, carrying a purpose too heavy to speak plainly. So he offers something impossible, a borrowing, a crossing. For a time, he will exchange his own male form with Shikhandi's female one. Not forever, he says at first, long enough to solve the crisis, long enough to quiet the king of Dasharna, restore honor, settle the marriage, and spare Panchala the march of war. Afterward, when the danger has passed, they will exchange again. The offer hangs in the moonlit air. The forest goes very quiet. You can feel the moment as a threshold more than a decision. One step, and the road behind vanishes. Shikhandi agrees. How exactly the change happens is not a thing for torchlight and inventory. It belongs to older hours. There is moon on leaves, a low murmur of mantra, the scent of flowering night vines growing suddenly stronger, cool air turning warm, then cool again. A sensation like standing ankle-deep in a river while the current changes direction around your legs. Then stillness. The world remains the world. Trees remain trees. Crickets continue their endless work, yet something has shifted, quietly and completely, like a lock turning inside an unseen door. Stunakarna now bears the other form. Shikhandi stands in the one needed. No thunder, no spectacle. Just a strange peace settling after years of friction, as if one note long, bent out of tune, has been drawn into pitch. For the first time in a long while, the breath comes easy. That matters. Sometimes the grand turning of fate happens with armies and conchas and the sky going dark. Sometimes it happens in a forest clearing where two beings exchange a burden under the moon and neither asks for applause. At dawn, Shikhandi returns. The road back to Panchala looks different now. Same dust, same thorn scrub, same ox carts creaking in the distance. But the spine is straighter. The panic has cooled into purpose. Sunlight lifts through morning mist in pale gold bands. Village smoke rises. Somewhere women are pounding grain in rhythm, and the ordinary sound feels almost miraculous. The world has not ended. News reaches Dasharna. Verification follows. The bride's father, still smoking with indignation, sends trusted women to examine and confirm what must be confirmed. They go. They return, satisfied. The fury collapses almost comically fast, which is the sort of thing kings would prefer nobody notice. One day, they're ready to set the horizon on fire. The next day, they are smoothing their beards and speaking of misunderstandings. Royal dignity is a very expensive cloth, but it tears surprisingly easily. War is withdrawn. The bride remains. The court of Panchala exhales so hard you would think the whole city had been holding its breath for a month. Drupada, relieved beyond measure, receives Shikhandi again, not as a problem to manage, but as a son restored to certainty. Priests mutter blessings, courtiers adjust their faces, servants hurry to replace panic with routine. The kitchens go back to feeding people instead of feeding rumor. Somewhere in the palace, no doubt, an old aunt claims she knew all along. Old aunts always do. But the forest remembers, and so does heaven. Kubera, lord of wealth and king among Yakshas, eventually learns what Stunakarna has done. Not all gifts given out of compassion are permitted without consequence. The great lord comes upon the forest dwelling, finds his attendant in altered form, and anger rises. Rules among such beings are not suggestions. Stunakarna has acted on pity, yes, but also on impulse. The punishment falls. Until Shikhandi's end comes, Stunakarna will remain as he is and cannot resume his own former state. The sentence is heavy, and yet the Yaksha accepts it. There is sadness in that forest after Kubera departs. Lamps burn low. The wind turns cooler. Stunakarna, who meant to lend a form for a little while, has given far more than intended. But even then, he does not call Shikhandi back in bitterness. He does not revoke compassion and demand repayment with interest. He simply endures. Far away, perhaps Shikhandi feels some echo of this and grows even quieter. A gift that costs the giver dearly settles differently in the heart. You feel its weight. After that, there is no going back. Shikhandi takes the warrior's place fully now. No more hovering at the edge of role and expectation. No more palace half light. Dawn after dawn, the training yard becomes a second world. The smell is dust, leather, oil, sun-warmed wood. Bow staves line the wall. Spears stand in ordered ranks. Shields catch the early light. Grooms lead snorting horses across packed earth, while instructors bark corrections that begin before breakfast and somehow continue through breakfast as well. A true military household never lets a person chew in peace. Shikhandi thrives in it, not easily. Nothing in this life has been easy, but fully. The body learns repetition until repetition becomes comfort. Feet placed just so, knees bent, shoulders square, breath steady, bowstring drawn back till fingers sing with strain. Release, again, again, again. Sweat down the spine, sun in the eyes, dust on the tongue. The sweet, brutal satisfaction of a target struck cleanly. You stand there in the yard and hear the snap of string, the thud into packed straw, the soft curse when an arrow veers. Ravens argue on the palace wall. Armor buckles clink. Someone has spilled sesame oil near the weapon rack, and the smell mixes oddly with horse and iron and marigolds from a shrine in the corner. This is not merely martial skill. It is anger learning discipline. The old fire, which once could only burn and remember, is given shape. Sword drill, chariot standing, shield turn, mace swing, spear cast, hours on horseback until the thighs ache, hours on foot until the soles feel bruised through sandals. Instructors praise little and demand much. Excellent. Shikhandi has no use for softness disguised as mercy. Drupada watches. He says little, but his eyes do not miss much. He has seen prophecy before. He has tried to grow destiny in sacrificial fire. Now he sees something harsher and more human. Purpose tempered by work. Not a miracle descending whole from heaven. A warrior being made by mornings. There are other princes in Panchala, other fighters, Drishtadyumna among them, flame-born and bright with his own terrible path. The siblings move through the same martial world, each carrying a different edge of the future. Training yards are odd places that way, half discipline, half prophecy, and all of it under the sun. Sometimes Shikhandi passes the old Garland. It still hangs where it hung, dry now, brittle with years, its flowers long gone brown and ghostly. Servants dust around it, but do not touch it. No one wears it. No one jokes near it. Even the boldest youths give it a respectful berth. It has the feeling of a coiled snake asleep in a shrine. Shikhandi pauses before it one evening. The corridor is cool. Lamps tremble in niches. Outside, rain taps the stone courtyard in the first quick spills of monsoon. The garland sways slightly in the moving air, as if recognizing its own future. No need for words. Some things know when they have reached the correct neck. Years gather. Word spreads of Shikhandi's prowess, though not in the loud, triumphant way bards usually prefer. More like a tension, passing from kingdom to kingdom. Panchala's prince has become formidable. Drupada's house is not lacking in warriors. There is something hard in Shikhandi, something not easily read. Men who dismiss too quickly often learn better in the practice. Ring. Beyond Panchala, the greater currents of the world keep moving. The sons of Pandu rise and fall and rise again. Dice tumble. A queen is humiliated before elders. Forest years pass. Oaths deepen. Alliances knit tighter. Weapons are sought. Tempers ripen. That vast family storm, already long in the making, drifts closer to breaking over everyone. And through all of it, Bhishma remains, old, towering, iron-bound, unconquered. He stands at Hastinapura, like a pillar no weather can bring down. Princes grow into men beneath his shadow. Kings measure themselves against his reputation and then wisely stop measuring. He is the grandsire, the vow made flesh, the warrior who cannot be overcome by ordinary means. If he takes the field for the Kauravas, who will stand before him? The question hangs over councils like smoke. In Panchala, Shikhandi hears his name, and something ancient stirs. Not the hot wild fury of Amba's earlier years. That has changed. Time and training have done their work. This is colder now, clearer, like a blade left overnight in river water. Sometimes, at dusk, memory returns, not as full scenes, but as sudden certainty. The feel of refusal, the unbearable stillness of being judged and sent away. The knowledge of a vow turned harder than compassion. Bhishma's face at a threshold, Salva's face at another, a life broken between them. Then the memory ebbs, and only one fact remains bright. He can be brought down, not by strength alone, not by boasting, not by armies crashing headlong into him like waves against a cliff, by a condition, by a boundary in his own heart. Bhishma would not strike one who had been female before. That old refusal, once a shield he held around himself, waits now like an unlocked gate. Shikhandi is the gate's key. You can feel the strangeness of that. An old wound has spent lifetimes walking toward a single weakness in a single vow. When the summons to war finally begins to move through the lands, it comes with all the usual royal nonsense. Messengers, seals, horses lathered with speed, trumpets, important men speaking as if they themselves invented urgency. Across Bharatavarsha, kings choose sides. Armor is inspected, chariot axles greased, elephants bathed and painted, conches tested until everyone nearby wants to throw them in a river. Panchala joins the Pandavas. How could it not? Drupada prepares, Drishtadyumna prepares, Shikhandi prepares. The camp before departure is its own kind of city. Fires in ordered rows, rice boiling in copper pots, priests blessing standards with kusa grass and murmured mantras, smiths at portable forges, horses stamping, harness bells jingling, leather smells sharp in the night air. Men laugh too loudly over simple jokes because war is coming and laughter keeps the teeth from chattering. Shikhandi sits apart some evenings, oiling bowstring, checking arrowheads, adjusting the fit of arm guard and cuirass. No wasted motion, no theatrical rage. The armor goes on piece by piece until the body seems to settle into its oldest intention. You are there close enough to hear metal taps, the whisper of cloth, the dry rasp of whetstone on blade. Above the camp, stars are hard and bright. Beyond the fires, darkness gathers over the roads to Kurukshetra. People speak Bhishma's name in lowered tones. They speak of Drona too, of Kripa, of Karna, not yet on the field, under Bhishma's command. They count armies and formations and auspicious omens. They argue over strategy until midnight and then begin again at dawn because this is what men do when terrified. They reorganize the obvious. Yet, amid all that noise, one fact moves steadily, quietly, like a river beneath reeds. Bhishma will not fight Shikhandi. Krishna knows it. Arjuna knows it. The elders know it, though not all will say so aloud. In some councils, the air tightens when Shikhandi enters, not from contempt now, from recognition. This is no longer the uneasy child in a corridor, no longer the subject of whispers behind fans. This is the warrior fate has been shaping with ridiculous patience. The condition has arrived wearing armor. At last, the armies begin to move. Kurukshetra waits wide under the sun, its sacred earth soon to be torn by wheels and hooves. Before battle fully opens, there are those long, trembling days of encampment when every banner snaps in the wind and every heart seems to listen for a signal not yet given. Dust lies on everything. Conches sound at practice. Priests tend little flames that shiver in brass bowls. Elephants sway like dark hills. The smell is dry grass, sweat, ghee smoke, horse, iron, and the faint, bitter note of fear. You stand at the edge of the Pandava camp and watch Shikhandi look across that field. Somewhere on the other side is Bhishma, old as the first wound, near as tomorrow. And if the moonlit forest was the threshold, this is the road beyond it. All those years ago, Amba could not make the world stop and hear her. Doors shut, kings refused, vows stood like walls. Now the wall has a seam in it. Now the rejected one has returned not as a pleading princess, but as a warrior in rank and armor, carrying the one presence before which Bhishma's hands must still themselves. The night before another day's strategy, campfires burn low. Shikhandi sits awake a little longer than the rest. The wind shifts. A horse snorts in sleep. Someone nearby mutters and rolls over on a blanket. Ash glows red, then dims. The smell of smoke clings to wool and hair. Far off, a conch answers another across the dark, like two sea creatures calling through fog. Perhaps in that hour, Shikhandi thinks of the Yaksha in the moonlit grove. Perhaps of the old Garland. Perhaps of nothing at all, because some purposes grow so large, they empty the mind instead of filling it. Dawn will come. Bhishma will rise into his chariot. The field will shake, and somewhere within that thunder, the path opened in a forest by compassion, sacrifice, and strange divine mercy will lead exactly where it was always leading, toward the grandsire, toward the lowered bow, toward the day an old wound finally stands in front of the man who made it and is no longer turned away. And at last, the field arrives, the one place where vows, curses, memory, and steel all agree to meet before sunset. Dawn comes hard at Kurukshetra, not gentle, not lovely, hard. The first light drags itself across a plain already trampled into exhaustion. Dust lies over everything like a second skin. The banners are stiff with it. The leather harnesses are stiff with it. The men are stiff with it too. You can taste the field before you fully see it. Dry earth, old smoke, horse sweat, ghee from the morning offerings, iron warmed too early by the sun. Conches begin before the sky is fully gold. One answers another, then 5, then 20, and then so many that the air itself seems to open. Drums join in, wheels creak, elephants groan awake like moving hills. Armor knocks against armor. Men tie turbans tighter, test bowstrings, whisper prayers, boast too loudly, laugh too sharply. That is how fear likes to dress itself, in noise. And in the middle of it all stands Bhishma. He has been doing this for 9 days. 9 days of ruin. Where his chariot goes, the Pandava lines bend and tear. He does not seem to tire. He is old, yes, but in the way a mountain is old. Not weak, just very difficult to argue with. His white banner streams in the hot wind, and his arrows come so quickly that men stop trying to count them. They fall in shining flights, thin and sudden, like a metallic monsoon. Morning after morning, he rides out. Morning after morning, the Pandava camp tightens with dread. By now, the horses know the path by smell. By now, the physicians barely sleep. By now, the cooks serve food to men who swallow without tasting it, because no one wants to think too hard about whether this might be the last warm rice they ever see. You are there in that camp before the 10th day, and the weariness is almost a sound of its own, not loud, just everywhere. A soldier sits on an overturned shield and stares at a torn sandal as if it personally betrayed him. Another tries to patch leather with fingers that will not stop trembling. Someone is snoring next to a spear rack, mouth open, as if war itself bored him into a nap. One horse keeps stamping because a fly has decided that apocalypse is no reason to skip breakfast. And always, at the center of the dread, one truth. Bhishma cannot be stopped like other men. Not by force alone, not by courage, not by skill. He loves the Pandavas. He fights for the Kauravas. He carries both truths in the same chest, and somehow that does not slow his hand. That is the agony of it. He is not a monster on that field. He is the grandsire. He is the elder who once held these boys on his lap, who watched them train, who loved them in his own stern and towering way. And still the field fills with the fallen. By the end of the 9th day, even Duryodhana has begun to taste panic. He goes to Bhishma in the night, armored in complaint and fear. He presses him hard, accusing him of holding back, of favoring the sons of Pandu, of being too soft where softness no longer belongs. It is a risky thing, needling a lion while asking it for protection. But Duryodhana has never been famous for caution. Bhishma listens. Then he tells him the truth. He has fought with all he has. He will continue. But there is one boundary he will not cross. He will not strike Shikhandi. Not now, not ever, because Bhishma knows. He knows the history standing inside that warrior's body. He knows the old name under the new one. He knows the woman he wronged has returned by the long road of fate, wearing armor this time. And he will not lift a weapon against that soul. Word travels. It always does in a camp. Faster than fire, faster than reason. By midnight, men who should be asleep are pretending to fetch water so they can linger near other fires and repeat what they heard from someone who heard it from someone who swears he heard it with his own ears. Shikhandi hears too, and Arjuna hears. And Krishna, of course, hears before the rumor even finishes being born. That same night, under a sky blurred by smoke and stars, the sons of Pandu go to Bhishma's tent. A strange walk. You can almost feel the earth holding its breath as they go. Enemies by sunrise, grandchildren by memory. They bow to him. He blesses them. Such is Kurukshetra. This is the family gathering from hell. Only everyone is polished, noble, and carrying enough weapons to flatten a province. They ask him how he may be brought down, and Bhishma, calm as winter moonlight, tells them, "Put Shikhandi before him. Let Arjuna stand behind. He will not strike." Arjuna hears those words, and they do not feel like victory. They feel like a stone in the throat. Because this is Bhishma. This is the old man who taught him what kingship looked like before the world grew crooked. This is the elder whose approval once mattered like rain matters to crops. Arjuna remembers being small, enough to climb into his lap, dust on his arms, laughter somewhere in the courtyard, the smell of sandalwood and bow wax and old silk. Bhishma telling him he was not his father, but his father's father. Memory is cruel that way. It does not arrive in order. It arrives in fragments sharp enough to cut through armor. Krishna sees Arjuna falter. He does not soften. There are moments when tenderness looks like firmness. This is one of them. He reminds Arjuna what the war has already cost. He reminds him that Bhishma stands between the Pandavas and survival. Reverence cannot stop arrows. Love cannot unmake formations. If Bhishma remains standing, the field will keep claiming their people by the thousand. So the plan is set. And then night has to be endured. That may be the longest part. You lie down if you are lucky enough to have a blanket and a space to lie down in. And sleep does not come kindly. Fires burn low. Somewhere men pray. Somewhere men weep quietly so their tent mates will not hear. Somewhere somebody is still bragging about a duel from 3 days ago, because denial is one of humanity's great talents. Shikhandi does not sleep much. How could he? Tomorrow, the path ends at Bhishma's chariot. Tomorrow, Amba's long heat, long humiliation, long vow, long rebirth, all of it narrows into one road on one battlefield under one sun. There are times when destiny sounds grand. This is not one of them. This sounds like a horse coughing in the dark, like a whetstone on steel, like someone whispering a prayer with cracked lips, like your own breath, too awake for the hour. When dawn finally returns, it brings no mercy. The 10th day begins. The armies arrange themselves again, though both sides now move with the stiffness of men who have already seen too much. Standards rise, drums beat. The first hot wind of morning pushes dust low across the plain, and for a little while the world is all bronze light and brown haze. You can barely see 10 chariots ahead. Then the sun climbs and shapes return. Bhishma's banner, Arjuna's ape banner, Shikhandi's place in the line. The first rush begins. Arrows, wheels, elephants lurching forward, horses foaming at the bit, drivers leaning into reins so hard their arms shake. Spears flash and vanish. The field becomes what it has been every morning now, a machine made of breath, noise, courage, and terrible momentum. Bhishma enters it like fire enters dry grass. He cuts through divisions. He scatters lines. Warriors fall back and surge again. His bow bends in a rhythm so steady, it almost feels calm, though nothing around it is calm. Men point and shout. Commanders redirect units to slow him. Very few succeed for long. From a distance, his chariot seems to glide. Up close, it is a storm. And toward that storm comes Shikhandi, not rushing wildly, not screaming, just advancing. That is somehow fiercer. Shikhandi stands in the chariot with a warrior's steadiness, armor bright under dust, bow ready. Years have led to this without hurry. Forest vows, ashes, rebirth, training, shame endured, role claimed, the strange night gift of the Yaksha. Every road, every humiliation, every refusal is here now, hidden under the simple fact of a warrior moving forward. Arjuna follows close behind. Krishna holds the reins. Their horses strain, white sides darkened by sweat, nostrils wide, harness bells shaking. Krishna's eyes are fixed ahead, sharp and still. Arjuna's hands are steady because they have to be. Sometimes duty arrives before the heart is ready. He knows that too well by now. You are in that chariot for a breath. You feel the jolt of wheels over broken ground. You hear the hiss of arrows passing so close they seem to pull at your hair. Sweat runs down your spine beneath cloth and armor. The handle of the bow is warm in your palm. Dust grits between your teeth. Ahead, through the blur and brilliance of battle, Bhishma sees them. He sees the banner first, then the warrior, then the truth. And time does something strange. The field is still full of chaos. Men are still striking, shouting, surging. Elephants still crash against one another. Conches still cry. Yet in the space between Bhishma and Shikhandi, another silence opens. Not outside the battle, inside it, a private silence, the kind that forms when an old debt finally arrives to be collected. Bhishma knows Amba, not by face. That face is gone. Not by voice. That voice burned and returned through another throat. But he knows. He knows the wound before him. He knows the vow behind his own ribs that made this moment inevitable. He knows what he did not repair when repair was still possible. His hands do not forget their skill, but they stop. He lowers his weapons against Shikhandi. Not from weakness, not from confusion, from decision. From that old line he will not cross, drawn years ago and held even now, when the cost is everything. Shikhandi sees it. Imagine that sight. For a lifetime and another lifetime, the world answered with refusal. Salva refused. Bhishma refused. Kings refused. Courts refused. Pity came. Justice did not. And now at last the man at the center of it all does not turn away, does not deny, does not overpower. He stops. It is not apology. It is not healing, but it is not denial either. Shikhandi lifts the bow and sends arrows toward Bhishma. They strike. Bhishma does not answer them. Around them, the field shudders on. War has no respect for private reckonings. It keeps moving, huge and hungry, while souls settle what they must inside it. Other warriors rush to defend Bhishma. Others rush to shield Shikhandi and Arjuna. The space around the grandsire becomes a whirl of desperate motion. Krishna leans toward Arjuna and urges him on. Now, this is the opening. This is the hour purchased by all that suffering. This is the seam in the wall. If Arjuna hesitates now, it closes. Arjuna raises Gandiva. No one on that field loves Bhishma more painfully than Arjuna in that moment. And perhaps that is why his arrows do not come wild. They come exact, one after another, swift, controlled, relentless. He shoots from behind Shikhandi as planned, while Bhishma, true to his word, does not lift his bow against the one in front. Arrows strike the grandsire from every side now, but Arjuna's are the ones carrying the weight of destiny. They come fast enough to blur. The string sings, the shafts fly. Again, again, again. The old warrior stands through all of it. That is Bhishma. He does not collapse at the first blow like some convenient villain from a village tale. Of course not. He receives the storm upright, splendid, even in his ending. His armor glitters through dust. His white standard shakes. His body shines with arrows lodged so thickly that he seems less like a man than a sacred tree suddenly heavy with iron leaves. Still he stands. Then the moment comes. His bow slips from his hand. His banner wavers. The charioteer can do no more. Bhishma falls, not to earth all at once, to arrows. So many arrows hold him that when he comes down, the ground does not fully claim him. He rests upon a bed made by the very force that brought him low, lifted above the dust by 1,000 piercing shafts. The field sees it and shudders. Bhishma has fallen. Everything changes. The sound changes first. That is what surprises you. The field does not become silent. Nothing so simple. But the noise shifts. A cry spreads. Men lower weapons without meaning to. Chariots slow. Elephants stop and sway. Even the wind seems uncertain what to do next. Across both armies, heads turn toward where the grandsire lies, suspended on his terrible couch of arrows. Friends and enemies alike stare, because some figures seem permanent until the instant they are not. The Kaurava host feels the world tilt under its feet. The Pandava host does not cheer the way lesser armies might have cheered. Relief comes, yes, necessary relief. But joy? No, not much. Bhishma is too large for simple celebration. He belongs to all of them. That is the sorrow. You stand in the strange hush that follows, and the smell of dust thickens in the heat. Sweat dries cold on the skin. A vulture circles high and then thinks better of it. Krishna brings Arjuna down from the chariot. Shikhandi too descends. They walk toward Bhishma, where he lies, arrow-borne, not yet leaving the world, because Bhishma does nothing by halves, not even dying. He has the old power to choose his final hour, and he is not done yet. The sun is moving southward still. He will wait for its northern turn. Of course he will. Even now he keeps an appointment with time itself. Warriors gather around him from both sides. Duryodhana comes. Drona comes. The Pandavas come. Kings who were trying to end one another a few breaths ago now stand together in a ragged ring, helmets dusty, faces drawn, looking down at the elder who raised a generation and helped break it. Bhishma's face is pale, but his eyes are clear. He asks for a pillow. Servants hurry forward with soft cushions, embroidered, rich, utterly useless. Bhishma sees them and almost laughs. A hero's bed, he reminds them, does not want a palace pillow. Not now. His gaze turns to Arjuna. The meaning is plain. Arjuna nods, though grief is working through him like a hidden fever. He takes up his bow again and sends 3 arrows into the ground beneath Bhishma's head. They rise as a support, fit for a warrior. Bhishma settles upon them and is satisfied. There is tenderness in that moment, so sharp, it almost hurts more than the battle. The grandson, who brought him down, now gives him rest. The air smells of hot metal and trampled grass. No one speaks loudly. Even the horses seem to understand. Bhishma looks upon them all, and his mind is far-reaching still. He tells them he will remain there until the proper season. He asks them to protect righteousness as best they can in a field already drowning in grief. He blesses, he instructs, he endures. Then thirst comes. It would, on such a day. Again the gathered warriors move to bring him cool water in cups and skins, but Bhishma does not want an ordinary drink brought by ordinary means. Again, his eyes turn to Arjuna. Arjuna understands. He fits a shaft to the string and sends it into the earth beside Bhishma. The arrow enters the ground, and from that wounded soil, water bursts forth, clean and bright, rising like a hidden river, remembering its path. It touches Bhishma's lips, and he drinks. A murmur passes through the crowd. Not loud, almost reverent. The earth itself seems relieved to offer him this last courtesy. You can feel the heat easing for one tiny breath as that water flashes in the sun. And what of Shikhandi? He stands there too, not triumphant. That is important. After so long, after so much carried through birth and rebirth, this moment does not taste like victory wine. It tastes like dust after crying, like hot wind after a funeral fire. Bhishma has fallen, yes. The vow has met the wound. The old refusal has reached its end. But Amba's years are not returned. The humiliation is not undone. Youth does not come back because justice finally arrived late and exhausted. Shikhandi looks at Bhishma, and perhaps what rises is not satisfaction, but emptiness first. A strange loosening, a long-held bowstring inside the soul suddenly released. No one warns you about that part. You imagine vengeance will roar like thunder. Sometimes it exhales, because what stood between them was never simple hatred. It was grief hardened into direction. Now the direction has fulfilled itself. And in that fulfillment, there is a sadness vast enough to stand beside relief. The sun lowers a little. The battlefield, for the first time in many days, is not charging but circling, pausing, reordering itself around one still center. Bhishma on the arrowbed becomes more than a fallen commander. He becomes a landmark, a shrine made in an afternoon. Men will come to him for counsel while the war continues around his waiting body. Such is the strange grandeur of the Mahabharata. Even in collapse, no one does anything modestly. The armies withdraw for the day. They must. Without Bhishma at the front, the 10th day cannot continue as it began. Men lead horses away slowly. Chariot wheels carve fresh tracks around old ones. Standards dip in the evening light. The dust that all day flew wild now settles softly over armor, hair, and the edges of broken things. You walk back through that dimness, and everything feels altered. The campfires will burn again tonight. The cooks will stir lentils again. Someone will complain about blisters as if the world is normal. Someone else will spend an hour looking for a missing sandal that has very likely entered another phase of existence entirely. War remains absurd, even when it is sacred, especially then. But underneath all of that, a hinge has turned. Bhishma, who seemed unmovable, has been moved. Not by greater force alone, by memory, by vow, by the soul he once could not place anywhere in the world without breaking it. Now that soul stood before him in armor, and he lowered his bow. As twilight spreads over Kurukshetra, the sky takes on that bruised violet color it loves at the end of violent days. Smoke drifts low. The smell of burnt offerings mingles with the smell of sweat and evening cook fires. Somewhere a priest chants. Somewhere a wounded man finally sleeps. Somewhere an owl begins before the sun is fully gone, impatient little creature. And on the field, Bhishma remains, arrows beneath him, sky above him, waiting. Shikhandi returns to camp through the dusk, carrying no shout of triumph, no lifted trophy, no wild laughter, only the quiet after a purpose fulfilled. That can be heavier than armor. Perhaps he looks once over his shoulder, perhaps not. The road behind him is long enough already. The road ahead is still war, yet something ancient has unclenched. Amba's cry, which once struck palace walls and came back unanswered, has at last reached the one man who could not ignore it forever. Not in Kashi, not in Salva's hall, not in forest hermitages, not in the chambers of kings. On the 10th day, under a sun hot enough to bleach banners and crack lips, with dust in every crease of cloth and the taste of iron in the wind, it reached him, and he answered in the only way left. He lowered his bow. Then evening deepens. The last light catches on arrowheads like a field of small stars. The conches are quiet now. Only the wind moves over Kurukshetra, soft as breath through dry grass, passing from Shikhandi's camp to Bhishma's bed of shafts and onward into the gathering night. So after all of that, what were the ancient storytellers trying to tell us? Something deep and difficult, I think. Not that Amba was simply wronged and then avenged. That is too small for what we just walked through. And not that Bhishma was simply noble and then punished. That is too neat. This tale keeps both hands full. It asks you to hold sorrow and duty together and feel the weight of both. Amba's suffering begins in a moment that looked glorious from the outside. A royal hall, wedding garlands, kings shining like polished metal. Then Bhishma enters, acting according to the warrior code he has lived by his whole life. He wins the princesses in combat for his brother. In that world, this is not madness to him. It is duty. It is custom. It is the proper action of a guardian protecting his house. And yet, it wounds her completely. That is one of the hardest truths in the whole epic. Dharma is not always cruel because people are evil. Sometimes it wounds because people follow one piece of righteousness so fiercely that they stop seeing the human being standing in front of them. Bhishma keeps his vow. Salva keeps his pride. The courts keep their rules. And Amba is the one left outside every door. That is why her pain matters so much. She is not ignored because no one hears her. She is ignored because every man around her can explain himself. That is the chill in this tale. Each person has a reason. Each person can point to honor, custom, shame, duty, reputation. And still, a life is broken. You can feel why the memory burns so long. This is where karma begins to ripen in a very human way, not as simple punishment, not as a cosmic clock counting sins and rewards. Karma in this tale is the long movement of action through time. Bhishma's act at Kashi does not end when the chariot stops. Salva's refusal does not vanish once Amba leaves his hall. A wound unanswered keeps traveling. It travels through forests, through austerities, through prayer, through birth itself. That is what Amba shows so powerfully. Intention endures. She takes her grief and refuses to let it dissolve into silence. At first, it is anguish, then fury, then tapas. And tapas is not just suffering on purpose. It is heat, inner heat, the force created when a person gathers all their scattered pain, all their longing, all their will, and turns it toward one impossible aim. Amba does that with terrifying steadiness. The world gives her almost nothing. Sympathy maybe, a few shaken faces, a few lowered eyes, but no true remedy. So she creates one across lifetimes. And that brings us to one of the most beautiful and unsettling ideas in this journey. The soul's story is larger than one body, one name, one social role. Shikhandi is where that truth opens wide. In one lifetime, Amba is a princess denied choice. In another, Shikhandi grows under prophecy, confusion, secrecy, pressure, and transformation. The outer identity shifts, the inner current does not. Maya is all over this part of the tale. Maya does not just mean illusion in the sense of something fake. It is the web of appearances that makes temporary forms look final. It is what makes people think, this is fixed, this is permanent, this is all a person is. A princess, a man, a woman, a vow, a reputation, a public shame, a royal role. But the soul moves deeper than those labels. Shikhandi's life breaks the confidence of everyone who thinks reality can be locked inside social categories. Bhishma himself, mighty as he is finally brought down through the very boundary he would not cross. The thing he thought was fixed becomes the doorway fate uses. The past returns wearing a different face, and in that return, something hidden finally stands in the light. The old injury was real. The new form is real. The deeper continuity between them is real too. By the time Shikhandi rides onto Kurukshetra, this is no longer just one person seeking vengeance. It is karma arriving at the exact place where it was once denied. Quietly, inevitably, with a bow in hand, and Bhishma matters just as much in this lesson because Bhishma is not a petty man. He is grand, disciplined, loyal, magnificent even. He gives up a kingdom for his father. He lives by vows most people could not keep for an afternoon. He protects the throne. He bears hardship without complaint. There is greatness in him, real greatness, but greatness without compassion can harden into tragedy. That is what his fall leaves behind. Bhishma's vow made him powerful. It also made him rigid. Again and again, he chose fidelity to his oath over tenderness to the people crushed beneath its shadow. He was not heartless. That is almost the sadder part. He felt deeply, but feeling is not enough if it never changes what you do. So he ends on a bed of arrows, still noble, still radiant, still worthy of reverence, and also pierced by consequences that took years to arrive. That image gives the whole tale its closure. Bhishma is not erased. Amba is not erased. Shikhandi is not erased. No one is reduced to a simple villain or hero. The reckoning is more honest than that. The universe does not forget the wound, but it does not forget the dignity of the wounded either. And the release, when it comes, is not loud. Shikhandi does not get a bright, easy triumph. Bhishma does not fall in disgrace. What happens is stranger, sadder, and truer. Recognition finally arrives. The bow lowers. The old cry is answered. The wheel turns. That is resolution. So if you gather the whole journey in your hands, this is what remains warm at the center of it. Dharma is real, but it is not a machine. If you cling to law, vow, role, or honor while refusing mercy, you can keep your righteousness and still leave devastation behind. Karma is real, and it is patient. What is denied in one season may return in another. What human courts refuse to set right does not simply disappear. Maya is powerful, but not ultimate. Bodies change, names change, social forms change. The soul carries deeper truths than the world first sees, and pain, when left unanswered, does not always fade. Sometimes it shapes a destiny until it is finally met, named, and released. That is why this tale ends with something quieter than victory. A vow met its limit. A wound reached its answer. A soul carried its purpose to completion. And after so much fire, that is the mercy in it. At last, nothing more needs to be demanded. At last, the cry has somewhere to rest. So when you close this journey in your mind, what remains is not only vengeance and not only sorrow. It is the strange patience of the universe the epic keeps returning to. A deed is done. Its echo continues. A person is cast aside. The soul does not vanish with the humiliation. Time passes. Names change. Bodies change. Kingdoms rise and fade. Still, the deeper truth keeps walking. That is why this story can feel severe and consoling at once. Severe, because it refuses to pretend that noble intentions erase harm. Consoling, because it refuses to believe that harm is the final word. Amba is not swallowed by silence. Bhishma is not allowed to remain untouched by what he set in motion. Shikhandi is not an accident in the story of the world. Each life matters. Each choice matters. Each consequence ripens in its own hour. And when that hour finally comes, it does not merely destroy. It reveals. It shows where mercy was absent. It shows where pride failed. It shows where a vow became too hard to serve life. And by showing these things clearly, it lets the heart unclench. That is the closure hidden inside the sadness. The wound was seen. The answer arrived. The wheel moved on. The arrows stop. Evening comes. And the story at last begins to breathe more slowly. The field of Kurukshetra exhales. All day it had thundered. Conches, wheels, hooves, bowstrings, men calling orders through dust thick as smoke. Now the noise thins. A breeze moves over torn banners. Somewhere far off, a horse stamps and snorts, offended to still be alive in all this confusion. And there, above the darkening earth, Bhishma remains, not standing now, not terrible and shining at the front of a charge. He lies upon his bed of arrows, lifted from the ground by the very storm that brought him down. The old warrior, who once seemed as fixed as a mountain, now rests beneath the open sky, still breathing, still waiting, while sunset lays copper light across his white beard and silver armor. You can almost feel the evening coolness touching the skin after a day of heat and iron. The dust settles on your arms. The smell is dry grass, sweat, leather, and the faint sweetness of crushed wild herbs under chariot wheels. Warriors come to him from both sides. That is the strange quiet after great violence. Men who tried all day to defeat one another now stand with lowered eyes around the same still figure. No one needs to be told to soften their steps. Even the clink of mail seems embarrassed. They bring cushions for his head. Soft ones, courtly ones, ridiculous really. Bhishma, lying on arrows, has no use for palace comforts now. So Arjuna sends shafts into the earth and makes a pillow fit for the grandsire. A hard pillow, a warrior's pillow. Bhishma rests on it and is satisfied. It is one of those moments only the Mahabharata could give you. Tenderness expressed in archery. Night gathers at the edges of the field. Lamps begin to glow in the camps. Ghee flames tremble in the wind. From somewhere near the water lines comes the low murmur of men washing dust from their faces and saying very little. There are some days after which words feel cheap. And Shikhandi is still here, not racing forward anymore, not carrying the whole old fire like a drawn blade, just here, breathing, watching. The purpose that crossed years, forests, shame, prophecy, training, and war has finally reached its mark. No drumbeat announces it now. No garland is lifted. No voice from the sky interrupts the dusk. Only this. The one once called Amba stands in the evening of another life and does not need to ask anymore. You can feel the hush of that. Not joy exactly, not sorrow alone. Something deeper and quieter, like a knot loosening in water. The wind passes over Bhishma first, then over Shikhandi, as if the same air wishes to touch both. It smells faintly of river mud from far away, though the field itself is dry. Maybe that is only memory moving through the night. In a story this old, memory has a way of arriving like weather. Above them, the sky darkens from gold to violet. The stars do what they always do. They come out without hurry. They do not pause for kings. They do not blink harder for vows. They simply appear one by one over Kurukshetra, over Hastinapura, over Kashi, over every road that led to this. And if you follow the feeling instead of the map, you can sense them all at once. A hall in Kashi bright, with lamps and wedding flowers. A young woman with her future still in her hands for one brief moment. A chariot cutting through uproar, a door closed in Salva's face, and then in hers, forest dust on bare feet. A garland hanging year after year, patient as fate. A child in Panchala carrying an old storm behind the eyes. A moonlit exchange beneath trees that listened and kept the secret. A battlefield where an old man finally saw not merely a warrior before him, but the unfinished cry that had come back. All of it now drifting into the same night. Bhishma will remain upon those arrows for days yet, waiting for the sun's northern turn. That is his last great stillness. Once he could command armies with a lifted hand. Now his final mastery is waiting, breathing in pain without fleeing it. Looking directly at the end he helped shape. Shikhandi does not need to wait in the same way. Some burdens are heavy because they must be carried. Some are heavy because they have been carried too long. And this one, at last, begins to leave. You stand in that deepening dusk and almost hear another sound beneath the wind, a dry whisper of old flower petals. The garland that once waited in lonely halls seems, somehow, to have fulfilled itself, not around a neck, not in ceremony, in time. That is enough. The camps quiet further, cook fires burn low, armor is unbuckled, horses are rubbed down and covered for the night. Somewhere a conch sounds once, not for battle now, but for evening prayer. Its note drifts long across the plain, softer than before, almost tender. The epic does not vanish. It never does. It recedes. It becomes torchlight seen from far away through trees. It becomes hoofprints filling slowly with moon shadow. It becomes old names carried on a river after the speakers are gone. And among those names, Amba no longer burns as an unanswered grief. Shikhandi no longer strains toward a single purpose. Bhishma no longer stands between vow and consequence with bow in hand. The wheel has turned. The cry has crossed the distance. The field remembers and then grows quiet. Far beyond Kurukshetra, night settles over palace roofs, temple courtyards, sleeping cattle, riverbanks silvered by the moon. Jasmine opens in the dark. The air cools at last. Somewhere in the unseen distance, water moves over stone, steady and unconcerned, as it did before these births and will, long after these names, are whispered less often. And on that vast plain, under stars older than every oath, the wind moves gently over the fallen banners, over the waiting arrows, over the one who lay down, and the one who was finally done carrying the wound.